Story 1.
I accidentally stopped a kidnapping while delivering pizza, and I didn't realize it at first. I work as a pizza delivery driver. Nothing glamorous, nothing exciting, just long shifts, bad tips, and driving in circles all night. But one shift turned into something I still can't fully process to this day. It was one of those nights where everything goes wrong. Orders wouldn't stop coming in, back-to-back deliveries, no breaks, no time to sit, no time to think. And it was hot. That kind of heavy, suffocating summer heat that doesn't go away even after the sun sets. My car's AC barely worked, so I kept chugging water just to stay functional. Big mistake, because I never stopped to use the bathroom. At first, it was manageable, then uncomfortable, then urgent. And by the time I was pulling up to my next delivery, it was an emergency. Luckily, I was already at the address. I figured I'd just run up, hand over the pizza, grab the cash, and then deal with my situation. Easy. Except, the moment I pulled up, something felt off. The house was completely dark. Not just lights off dark, I mean dead silent, no signs of life dark. No porch light, no TV glow, no movement behind the windows. Nothing. And the street? Also quiet. Too quiet. Now, this was a college area. It was July, so yeah, a lot of students were gone for the summer. But still, someone had ordered this pizza. I sat there in my car, engine running, trying to decide what to do. There was no way I was just walking up to a pitch-black house like that. Not at night, not alone. So I grabbed my phone and called the number on the order. It rang. Once. Twice. Then finally, a click. At first, I didn't hear words, just breathing. Heavy, uneven, almost panicked. Then a shaky voice. Hello? I straightened up, trying to sound professional. Hey, I'm outside with your pizza, but doesn't look like anyone's home. There was a pause. Then the voice said, breathless, I'm not there yet. That annoyed me more than it should have. Probably because I was distracted. Probably because I really needed a bathroom. So yeah, I snapped. Look, if you're not here, I'll have to cancel the order. It's cash, right? I can't just wait around all night. Next time, maybe plan it better. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted it. Immediately, because the voice changed. Clearer now, younger. A girl, early 20s maybe. Oh my God, no, please, she said quickly, almost out of breath. I was running home. I almost didn't hear you. I just took out my AirPods. Can you hear me okay now? She sounded exhausted, panicked. I lost track of time at work, but I knew you'd be coming, so I'm literally sprinting home right now. Please don't leave. I'm starving and I don't have a car. Just 5 minutes, I promise. And then it clicked. I knew this voice. I'd delivered here before. She was always polite, always tipped decently, never caused problems. And here I was, snapping at her like an asshole. Yeah, it's fine, I said, softer this time. I'll wait. I hung up. And then the real problem came back, full force. I looked around. No public bathrooms, no gas stations nearby, no empty alley, no empty bottle either. I'd thrown one out earlier like an idiot. The only thing remotely useful was a line of thick bushes near the front walkway of the house. No lights, no people, my car parked across the street, and thankfully no uniform that would identify me. I hesitated maybe 2 seconds. Then I made a decision. I got out of the car, walked quickly toward the bushes, picked the thickest one near the front door, and yeah, emergency situation. At first, everything felt normal. Relief hit instantly. But then, something felt wrong. The sound. It wasn't hitting dirt. It wasn't hitting leaves. It sounded solid. And before my brain could even process that, a voice exploded from right in front of me. What the hell? A man suddenly burst out of the bush, right in front of me. I stumbled back, completely stunned, still trying to zip up as he shoved past me. He was wiping himself off, and yeah, I had just hit him directly.
For a split second, I saw him clearly. Tall, broad build, dark hoodie, in the middle of a hot summer night. Then he ran, no hesitation, no explanation, just sprinted down the street and disappeared into the darkness. A few seconds later, tires screeching, a car speeding away. And that's when everything clicked into place. That girl, she said she was running home, alone, at night, and there was a man hiding in the bushes right next to her front door. If I hadn't been desperate enough to stop right there, I don't even want to think about what could have happened. I just stood there, frozen, not even fully dressed yet, trying to understand what the hell I had just walked into. My brain refused to accept it. It kept searching for some logical explanation, some normal reason. Maybe the bushes lead to a backyard. Maybe there's a basement entrance. Maybe he was just... And then another thought cut through everything. Dude, he was wearing a hoodie in 90 degrees heat. That is not normal. That guy was waiting for someone. And suddenly, the fear hit hard. I had just been standing inches away from a man hiding in the dark outside a young woman's house. At night, any normal person would run, get in the car, leave immediately. But my brain decided to do the absolute worst thing possible. I stepped closer.
Eventually, I told myself something simple. I was safe in my locked car, engine running. If anything happened, I could drive away in seconds. But her? She was still coming here, and she had no idea what might be waiting for her. My hand went back to my phone. I started dialing her number. But then, a thought hit me so hard I froze. What if there is no girl? I stopped breathing for a second, because yes, I was pretty sure I had delivered here before, maybe 90%. But what if I was wrong? What if the girl on the phone was just bait? A voice designed to pull me exactly where I was right now. Every delivery driver knows stories like that. The fake orders, the setups, the trap house calls, the kind of thing you never believe until you're in it. I replayed her voice in my head, breathing hard, running, begging me not to leave, saying she wasn't there yet. It felt real, but so did a lot of dangerous things. No, I muttered to myself, I'm not taking that risk. I dialed 911. The dispatcher answered quickly, calm, controlled, professional. And honestly, that helped, because I was anything but calm. I started talking too fast, too much. Everything came out broken and overlapping. There's a guy outside. He was in the bushes, but I think he was waiting for her, not me. And I don't know if she's even real, but I talked to her on the phone, and she said she's running home and... Sir, slow down, the operator said firmly. Help is on the way. But I couldn't slow down. My brain was spiraling. You have to get there before she arrives, I said. He wasn't waiting for me, he was waiting for her. But maybe she doesn't exist. But I did talk to someone, so if she's real, she's walking into something. Then I blurted out, oh, and you'll know the guy because I peed on him. Not on purpose, it's a long story. A pause. You did what? It doesn't matter. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. Just breathe, just wait. But then, my phone lit up. Incoming call. Her number. I froze. I couldn't answer without dropping 911. So I didn't. I ignored it. A second later, a text came through. Hey, I'm here, but I don't see you. I read it out loud, my voice shaking. The dispatcher said officers were minutes away. Just stay put, don't go anywhere. But I already knew I couldn't, because now it wasn't theory. She was there, right now, standing outside that house, possibly walking straight into something she couldn't see. I can't just sit here, I said, and before they could respond, I hung up. I turned the car around. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. Every second felt wrong. Every turn felt too slow. And my mind kept repeating one thing. Don't be too late. Don't be too late. Don't be too late. I was muttering under my breath. Shit, fuck. And then I saw her.
Story 2. A grumpy teacher once threatened to send me to the principal's office. Fine by me. I was more than happy to let the principal know about this teacher's nonsense. This all happened over 10 years ago, so some of the details are a little blurry. It was the start of my senior year in high school. I went to a tiny rural school where the top students were moved into a separate building to take dual enrollment college classes online. The woman who supervised us had been working in the district for over 15 years. She knew all of us, our families, had taught us in different grades, and even coached half of us in track or tennis. Keep in mind, the entire school from kindergarten through 12th grade barely had 500 students. She trusted us, made sure we kept up with our online work, and otherwise let us use our time productively once our main assignments were done. For me, that meant practicing guitar and reading tactical guides for the next sports competition. I was a decent student, just extremely lazy. Then came the first day of senior year. Our beloved supervisor moved away because her husband got a better job, and in her place walked this tall, red-headed guy no one had ever seen before. He turned out to be the new girls' basketball coach and our online program supervisor. Since college courses wouldn't start for a couple weeks, he spent the entire day bragging how lucky we were to have him. He'd spent the last decade at a university, so he knew how the system worked. He promised to make sure we didn't slack off since we were seniors. The fact that he left a university to teach at a rural high school should have been a red flag to whoever hired him, but whatever. For the first couple of weeks, this coach, let's call him Bob, made us do pointless busy work, APA format essays on respect, or searching for new car listings for his wife with citations. His excuse was that he was preparing us. We politely explained that dual enrollment classes from a state college were usually harder than normal high school ones, except maybe math and science, but he ignored us. When the courses finally began, Bob only got worse. He constantly insulted students if they did something he didn't like, or if their political views didn't match his university background. He insisted we submit every assignment to him first before sending them to the actual professors. The problem? He graded slowly, and plenty of us lost points for late submissions. Eventually, we just started sending our work directly to the professors while copying him to avoid trouble. Bob also claimed we weren't mature enough for this kind of learning, even though the program required at least a 3.0 GPA to stay in, and our average was closer to 3.8. According to him, if it were up to him, he'd drag our entitled butts back to the main school building. The breaking point came at the end of the fall semester. Finals were over, and we were waiting for break. Bob stormed in that morning in even fouler mood than usual. Later, I learned it was the day his divorce proceedings began, and he started yelling at one girl about her clothes. She ignored him like the rest of us. That just made him angrier. He launched into another rant about how terrible and arrogant we all were. Nobody cared. Realizing he couldn't punish us for anything, he turned on one guy in particular. This student had been placed in our class because it was a quiet environment, and he was actually the only one working at that moment. The exchange went something like this. Bob: "So, what are you even doing over there?" Student: "Just trying to study for my exams so I don't fail the year." Bob: "And what for? So you can flip burgers at Dairy Inn?" That kid, my cousin, by the way, later became a welder and earns a solid living. At the time, though, he was struggling hard, both academically and personally, and I knew how much effort he was putting in to get back on track. Despite his kind heart, people outside our family often labeled him a failure. And here was Bob, tearing into the most vulnerable kid in the room, my own family. That was the moment I lost it. It was time to get back at him in the strongest way possible without hurting myself or ending up in trouble. By then, my mom had already been teaching in the district for over 25 years, and my stepdad, though retired, had been a school psychologist. I knew the rules ins and out. Up until that point, I had held back from telling my parents the full truth about his behavior, mainly because Coach Bob's daughter had already become part of our friend group. I realized how rough things would get for her if her dad lost his job. His reputation already made her school life difficult. But since she was set to leave for college in another state after graduation, the collateral damage would be minimal. Knowing what I knew, I casually dropped the line. Coach Bob, if you actually knew half as much about basketball as you think you know about my cousin, you'd still be at the university, or at the very least, the school board would have renewed your contract at the last meeting. So, where exactly are you planning to work after this year wraps up? The classroom went dead silent. That information wasn't public yet. Bob's face flushed bright red. His voice shook as he barked, "Out, now!" I calmly set down my book and walked into the hallway. Bob followed, shut the door, and then exploded, screaming in my face for nearly 4 straight minutes. He threw every insult he could muster, calling me a lazy, arrogant piece of trash who'd fooled every teacher, coach, and even his daughter, but not him. According to him, I'd never amount to anything in life and just coast along off my family's name. I'll give him this, his lung capacity was impressive. I don't think he even took a breath during the whole rant. When he finally stopped, I asked politely, "Coach Bob, may I go back to my reading now?" He roared even louder, "No, you're going straight to the principal's office, and you're going to repeat every single word you just said. Got it?" "Yes, sir," I answered calmly. "I'd be glad to. Actually, I was planning to ask the principal for a recommendation letter for a scholarship anyway. And of course, he'll want to know why I said what I said. I wouldn't be able to lie about it, so I'd have to mention our little chat here." At exactly that moment, another teacher, who also happened to be a relative of mine, stepped into the hallway to check out the noise. She caught the tail end of Bob's tirade. She looked ready to intervene, but I gave her a smile and a quick wink. I had it under control. At 18, I felt like I was on top of the world. Bob marched me back into the classroom, but didn't send me to the office immediately. I waited by the door, expecting him to follow through. Minutes ticked by. Finally, he muttered, "Sit down, Jones." "Coach Bob, I think the rules call for a trip to the principal's office after what just happened." "If you insist," he snapped, his voice rising again, but by then he realized the corner he had backed himself into. He scribbled out a referral slip, and I gladly walked down to the office. The principal was shocked to see me, and even more shocked that I was there for a disciplinary issue. I explained what happened. In the end, I got 1 day of after-school detention for being openly disrespectful, which honestly I probably deserved. The next 2 weeks were pure bliss. Bob barely said a word. Most of the time, he either glared at me or scrolled job postings. By the start of spring semester, he was gone. Turns out, he'd already accepted another position before Christmas break and left early to be ready for spring training. Funny coincidence, right? Years later, I found out he didn't last there either. He was fired not long after, and his marriage ended too. Other teachers had complained about him for years, and apparently he'd been skating on thin ice well before my little stunt. Honestly, writing this all out now, I almost feel sorry for the guy. Almost.
Story 3. I showed my husband a silly joke. He got angry and left. Then I found out he'd been cheating on me for a long time. Hi everyone. I usually just scroll through Instagram, so this is my first time posting here. Honestly, I never thought I'd be the one writing something like this, especially since my husband, 30 male, and me, 27 female, always had what I thought was a perfect marriage. Sure, we had small arguments like everyone else, but overall, everything seemed great. We got married in April 2021, and life since then had been smooth, until a few days ago. That afternoon, we came home from a lunch with some friends, let's call them Kai and Marie, who recently got engaged. It was just a casual lunch, nothing dramatic. We even brought home some amazing pasta, which I'm eating right now because it's too cold for ice cream. We live in a tiny apartment. My husband went to shower first while I cleaned up the leftovers. When it was my turn, I showered, and afterward I squeezed out too much lotion. I rubbed it in, but there was still some left on my fingers, so I did what any totally reasonable adult would do. I drew a smiley face with little hair on my thumb. I proudly walked out of the bathroom giggling and said, "Look, it's the lotion man!" He didn't laugh. He just stared at my hand and blinked. I kept joking around, talking in a silly voice, saying random nonsense, trying to make him smile. But after a minute or two, he just stood up and walked out. I thought he was still joking, so I laughed and asked where he was going, but he grabbed his truck keys and left. He always keeps his pickup stocked after road trips, clothes, snacks, everything, so it didn't immediately hit me that he was really leaving. When I finally realized, I felt like the biggest idiot alive. I texted him several times. He replied once, saying he needed to think things over and that he was staying with his brother, Tyler. Since then, he hasn't answered or even read my messages. His brother isn't replying either. I've just been sitting here, staring at the door, replaying everything over and over. We've been together for years. I've always been a little goofy, it's part of who I am, and he's always found it cute. Now I feel like an idiot for making that stupid lotion man joke and not realizing something was off. He's never left the house like that before, even during hard times. I'm trying to give him space, but I can't stop overthinking. Divorce sounds like a nightmare. I keep asking myself, was my dumb little lotion joke really that bad? How do I even begin to fix this? Update 1. I followed your advice and gave him space. Reading your comments made me question how accurate my idea of our perfect marriage really was. I still believe we were good together, but maybe I missed something. Anyway, some of you were right. It wasn't really about the lotion man, but you were also partly wrong. Something did happen during that lunch with our friends. My husband came back a couple of days ago. He apologized and said he wanted to talk. I agreed. I missed him so much, even though I tried not to show it. He told me the whole story. So we had lunch with our friends, Kai, 30 male, and Marie, 29 female. They'd just gotten engaged. It was a buffet-style restaurant, so people kept getting up for food. At some point, my husband and Marie went together, or maybe it was near the end. I remember chatting with Kai alone for a while before they came back. Either way, they were alone briefly. Marie apparently confessed to my husband that when Kai proposed, she realized she was actually in love with him. But she still said yes to Kai and tried to suppress her feelings. That's why she invited us to lunch, as some kind of closure. But instead of closure, she told my husband she wanted to run away with him. Marie is annoyingly gorgeous, blonde, blue-eyed, tall, and thin like a runway model. Think Emma Watson, but colder. I hate how much that bothers me. My husband said he politely turned her down and wished her well, but admitted that her confession messed with his head. We all went to college together, so we've known each other for years. When I came out of the shower later that day, laughing with a towel on my head and making silly jokes with the lotion man, he said something in him just snapped. According to him, my immaturity in that moment clashed with how mature and graceful Marie had seemed. It triggered some sort of emotional panic about our marriage, so he ran off to his brother's place. He claims that after a few days apart, he realized how much he loved me and came home. I just stared at him in disbelief. I asked a few questions, then told him to sleep on the couch for the night. He agreed. I didn't sleep at all. I still can't believe he almost threw away our marriage over some emotional fantasy with a woman who's engaged.
The more I think about it, the harder it is to even look at him. We've since had Thanksgiving dinner with his family and even spent a night together again. I think he believes everything is fine now, and honestly, part of me wants to forgive and move on, just to feel normal again. But I don't know what to do next. He'll be home from work in about 6 hours. I'm a teacher, so I have the day off, and my brain's been spinning with options all morning. A. Tell Kai what his fiancée did. My husband begged me not to, saying Marie just had a moment of weakness. B. Contact Marie directly, either to confront her or to have a calm talk, though that sounds unlikely. C. Call Tyler, my husband's brother, and ask if my husband ever really stayed with him. His house is uncomfortably close to Marie's, and that makes me nervous. Or D. Do all of the above. I honestly don't know what I'll do yet. I showed my husband a silly joke. He got angry, walked out, and never came back. Turns out he'd been cheating on me for a long time. Hi everyone, I usually just scroll through Instagram, so this is my first time posting here. Honestly, I never thought I'd be the one writing something like this, especially since my husband, 30 male, and me, 27 female, always had what I thought was a perfect marriage. Sure, we had small arguments like everyone else, but overall, everything seemed great. We got married in April 2021, and life since then had been smooth, until a few days ago. That afternoon, we came home from a lunch with some friends. Let's call them Kai and Marie, who recently got engaged. It was just a casual lunch, nothing dramatic. We even brought home some amazing pasta, which I'm eating right now because it's too cold for ice cream. We live in a tiny apartment. My husband went to shower first while I cleaned up the leftovers. When it was my turn, I showered, and afterward, I squeezed out too much lotion. I rubbed it in, but there was still some left on my fingers, so I did what any totally reasonable adult would do. I drew a smiley face with little hair on my thumb. I proudly walked out of the bathroom giggling and said, "Look, it's the lotion man!" He didn't laugh. He just stared at my hand and blinked. I kept joking around, talking in a silly voice, saying random nonsense, trying to make him smile. But after a minute or two, he just stood up and walked out. I thought he was still joking, so I laughed and asked where he was going. But he grabbed his truck keys and left. He always keeps his pickup stocked after road trips, clothes, snacks, everything, so it didn't immediately hit me that he was really leaving. When I finally realized, I felt like the biggest idiot alive. I texted him several times. He replied once, saying he needed to think things over and that he was staying with his brother, Tyler. Since then, he hasn't answered or even read my messages. His brother isn't replying either. I've just been sitting here, staring at the door, replaying everything over and over. We've been together for years. I've always been a little goofy, it's part of who I am, and he's always found it cute. Now I feel like an idiot for making that stupid lotion man joke and not realizing something was off. He's never left the house like that before, even during hard times. I'm trying to give him space, but I can't stop overthinking. Divorce sounds like a nightmare. I keep asking myself, was my dumb little lotion joke really that bad? How do I even begin to fix this?
First update. I followed the advice people gave me and gave him space, but reading everyone's comments made me think, maybe our perfect marriage wasn't as perfect as I believed. And turns out you were right about something happening during that lunch. My husband came back a couple of days later, apologized, and said he wanted to talk. He told me that while I was chatting with Kai, Marie had confessed to him that she was in love with him and had been since college. She said she'd accepted Kai's proposal hoping the feelings would fade, but seeing my husband again brought everything back. She even asked him to leave me for her. He said he turned her down and wished her well, but he admitted that the confession messed with his head, that he started comparing us. Marie was beautiful, confident, and composed. Meanwhile, I'd been goofing around in a towel, laughing about a lotion face. He said it made him suddenly question our whole relationship, and that's why he panicked and left. I was speechless. He said he realized how stupid it was and that he still loved me. I told him to sleep on the couch. Since then, he's been acting like everything's fine again, but I can't unhear what he said.
that another woman's confession made him doubt me. I don't know if I can ever look at him the same way. He thinks we can just move on, but I'm torn. Part of me still loves him. Another part wants to scream. I've been thinking about telling Kai what Marie did, but my husband begged me not to, saying she just made a mistake. I'm not sure I believe that. Second update. Thank you all so much for the love and support. Seriously, I didn't expect such kindness. My last post was deleted, but here's what happened since. I took your advice. I talked to everyone involved, Kai, Marie, my husband, and Tyler. What I found out completely shattered me. When I met with Kai, I told him everything I knew. He was skeptical at first, then broke down crying. Turns out Marie had told him nothing. Together, we went to confront her. At first, she denied everything. Then she snapped. The truth came out, and it was so much worse than I imagined. My husband wasn't innocent. He was the one who'd started everything. He had suggested to Marie that before she officially married Kai, the three of them, him, Marie, and another woman, should spend a night together, and Marie had agreed. Apparently, this wasn't new. She'd been cheating on Kai for years, with both men and women, and my husband had been cheating on me just as long. They covered for each other. Marie said she backed out of that threesome idea at the last minute because she wanted to be faithful now that she was engaged. My husband got angry, and not long after, I showed him the lotion man. He snapped, left, and ran off. Later, I spoke with Tyler. He said my husband came over around 11 p.m. and left at 8 a.m., meaning there were about 3 unaccounted hours. He guessed my husband might have just driven around to clear his head, but that didn't sound like him. That night, when my husband fell asleep early, I went through his phone. At first, nothing. Then I found a hidden folder, and there they were, dozens of nudes. Not mine, not Marie's either, from another woman. Let's call her Allison. Stunning redhead, hourglass figure. Their messages went back to February, right before Valentine's Day, when I was planning a surprise for him. She didn't even know he was married until recently. When she found out, she was furious. And here's the part that made me sick. My husband told her he would bring me to a hotel to prove that I was okay with their affair. Sound familiar? It was the same idea he'd pitched to Marie. After that, I couldn't even pretend anymore. The next morning, I packed my things. He cried, begged, swore he loved only me, blamed his weakness for redheads, said I was the only one that mattered. I told him it was over. The apartment's in his name, so I left. Right now, I'm staying with Kai. He's heartbroken too. We both are. I don't know what comes next. Divorce, therapy, or just trying to survive this. But at least now I know the truth. His fiancée meant everything to him. We sat together for a long time, hugging, crying, saying all kinds of nonsense, just trying to hold ourselves together. He tried to cheer me up and made lunch. It turned out great. He's an amazing cook. I showed him my 2 previous posts, and he laughed at some of your comments. As far as I know, my almost ex-husband is now with Marie. I don't care about them. Honestly, it even feels kind of nice, like a chapter has finally closed, and I don't have to tiptoe around anymore like I did these past few days. Tomorrow, Kai and I are going to the gym for yoga, to relax and maybe figure out what to do next. We both took a day off, and I'm sorting out my finances. I hope to start the divorce process soon so I can finally call him my ex. I'm still a complete mess. My desk is still covered with our photos, and our wedding picture is still the wallpaper on all my devices. I know my students will notice his sudden disappearance from my life, and I'll have to tell them that the guy I used to talk so much about is now divorcing me. I'll have to tell my family and friends too, the ones who are my main support right now. It hurts to realize that eventually Kai and I will have to move out separately because he's the only real support I have in this whole mess. Housing, divorce expenses, lawyers, therapy. Sigh, so much ahead. It's hard to believe I once thought this relationship was perfect. Anyway, thank you all so much. I've already written about how much support I've received here, but honestly, your sincerity and kindness, without exaggeration, saved my life. I would have kept living with that cheater otherwise, and Kai too. This community is incredible. So many kind people who care, follow my story, and wish me well. I'll definitely come back for advice again, but please know I've read everything. Yes, everything, and I've seen all your kind words. Author's note. I've been scrolling through the comments for a while now, and honestly, I'm amazed at how many people responded to my story. There's a lot I need to clarify, so here we go. Not much has changed. It's only been a week since my last update. My husband and I briefly talked about the upcoming divorce. That's all. I'm still healing, working, and slowly getting back to myself. Ask me again in a year, maybe I'll be better then. As for Allison, the mistress, I still haven't been able to contact her, though some of your advice really inspired me to try again. And about Kai and me? I know many of you are discussing this, so I'll clarify right away. Kai and I are rebuilding our friendship. Honestly, I don't think we'd work as a couple. Kai wants a calm and independent life for two, while I dream of having kids. He admitted that he has a very low libido, one of the reasons he blames himself for everything that happened, and mine, on the contrary, is high. Plus, now we're more like brother and sister. Still, thank you for worrying about my options. I'm not ready to date yet, and probably won't be for a while. This story is fake. Gotcha! Just kidding. I wish it were fake. No hurts on you if you don't believe me. Not everything on the internet can be trusted, and I doubt I can convince you otherwise. But unfortunately, yes, I live in this reality, and no hate messages will change that. About family, friends, students, and so on. My family is of course on my side. Most of our mutual friends too. Yes, I told my students everything, and you know what? They were incredibly supportive. I've already cleared my desk of all reminders of him. The next step is to clear my head of that lotion-scented man. I tried to recreate his look as best I could. I'll post a photo on my profile soon. Edit, there he is. If I missed something, let me know. There are so many comments. I haven't gone through all the new messages yet, and I'm really sorry I can't reply to everyone. I'm super busy right now, but I hope to catch up with some of you over the weekend.
Third update, the final one, Lotion Man Years Later. Oh God, that title is awful. Sorry, I'll come up with something better once my brain starts working again. It's that time of year, you know? Check in on your teacher friends if you have any. Hey everyone, it's been a long time, but I finally logged back into this account. And wow, I don't even know where to start. So much support, so many New Year wishes. It's just incredible. I love the internet sometimes. You were with me when I was at my lowest point. I've gotten dozens of messages asking how I've been, what's new, and even stories from people who went through almost the same thing. One girl said her boyfriend blamed everything on their new puppy. Seriously. She even sent a photo of that little fluff ball. It's crazy how such a painful experience turned out to be so common. Still, I haven't lost faith in humanity, thanks to the wave of love you've all given me. It's been almost 2 years now. It feels like an eternity ago and just yesterday. All right, to the point. Let's start with the bad news. Kai and I had a pretty big fight. I won't go into every detail, that would take about 30 pages, but long story short, we were roommates. We lived together, shared everything, chores, shopping, daily life. Whenever I went to the store, he knew. I knew when he got home from work. We were just always aware of each other's schedules because we lived side by side and ran a shared household. At some point, Kai told me he was going on a date. Cool, I was happy for him. I was still deep in the divorce process then, emotionally shattered, not thinking about relationships at all. Kai and Marie, since they never married, broke up a bit easier than I did, but it was still hard. He went on one date, then another, and that was it. A week passed without news, so I asked, what happened? He just said she was ghosting him. Then, a week later, out of nowhere, he dropped a bombshell. He was dating Marie. I know, sounds insane, right? But he told me this while sitting on the couch crying like a kid. And I couldn't even be mad. I just felt sorry for him. It's not easy to recover from broken relationships. He said those dates made him realize that everything between them really was over for good. He described it like this, or close to it.
When I first met Marie, she seemed like a sweet, polite girl next door, like a cashier with a kind smile. But as I got to know her, I found out she was fun and free-spirited. That's what I fell for. And when I saw her again recently, it felt like she'd reset to factory settings. That hit him hard, like he'd gone full circle for nothing. After 2 dates, he didn't just ghost her, he blocked her everywhere. It was a bit hard for me to listen to. It reminded me way too much of my own situation, but I tried not to dwell on it and just comforted him. For a few months after that, everything was calm. During that time, Kai turned me into a total gym girl. It's funny rereading my old posts, how skeptical I was about the gym back then. Anyway, after a few peaceful months, Kai had news again. He was going on another date, this time with a friend of a friend. I said the usual, great, go for it. I was still angry at the world, still legally married, so I wasn't thinking about new relationships. As I mentioned, Kai and I unintentionally kept tabs on each other because of how we lived. So when he started leaving home at 2 p.m. and returning at 8 p.m., his dates lasting hours, of course I noticed. I didn't say anything. I figured maybe he was just smitten, which made sense. But his absences were pretty noticeable. He even asked me to do little errands for him because he knew he wouldn't have time due to his long outings. Eventually, I met the girl. Her name was Grace. She was in her 20s, very sweet, and also a teacher. She worked in an elementary school, but we still had a lot to talk about. At that point, everything seemed perfect. Kai and Grace were adorable together. Summer went by peacefully. Everything felt stable. I had just officially finalized my divorce. But damn, those dates were endless. Even the short ones lasted 3 or 4 hours. He would just disappear. So I finally decided to bring it up carefully. Kai said Grace usually picked the meeting spots herself, places 1 or 2 hours away with traffic. When I asked where Grace actually lived, maybe they were meeting halfway, he calmly said, I don't really know. That's when alarm bells went off in my head. Maybe I've read too many infidelity forums, but something about it felt off. Grace couldn't have lived that far away. She was friends with one of our mutual acquaintances. They'd been dating for months. She'd even had dinner at our place more than once. And yet, he didn't know where she lived, and all their meetings happened miles away. Suspicious much? So yeah, I probably crossed the line. I searched her name on Instagram, and boom! Grace in a wedding dress with some guy named Mike. The post was from 2019. She was married. I shot up from bed and ran straight to wake Kai up. Yes, I know, total idiot move. It was midnight. He had work at 7 a.m. and there I was, waving my phone in his face like a lunatic. When I finally stopped rambling, Kai exploded. He went from groggy to furious in 2 seconds flat. He started yelling at me for invading his privacy, demanding why the hell I was snooping in his relationship. When I tried to explain my concerns, he got even angrier. Within minutes, it turned into a full-blown shouting match. He accused me of crossing every possible line, which honestly was partially true, but we lived together, always knowing what was going on in each other's lives. I asked him why he was mad if I was just worried about him. He fired back that I was obsessed with him, that we'd long felt like our friendship had crossed the line, and that's why I was stalking him. That's when I lost it completely. I said things I regret, brought up Marie and told him I wouldn't date him for $1 million. He started yelling back, calling me names. It was ugly. Eventually, I stormed out. The next morning, he woke me up before work. I thought he'd cooled off, maybe even come to apologize. But instead, he dropped a bomb. He knew. He'd known Grace was married almost from the start, but didn't care. Apparently, her husband was a good guy, but Grace told Kai she didn't feel anything for him anymore, so he just went along with it.
I was stunned. I asked how he'd feel if Marie's lovers knew she was engaged and still slept with her. He got defensive again, shouting at me not to bring up Marie. We argued, not as loud as the night before, but still heated. He said he'd kept it secret because he knew I'd make a scene. I told him that cheating was a deep wound for me, and I'd expected it to be the same for him. But he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "It's not." Then he added that living with me was already like being in a relationship, and that I had no right to interfere in his personal life. That one really hit hard. I said, "Fine, date whoever you want. I just wanted you to know you're helping someone cheat." He shrugged, said he didn't care, and left for work. I wasn't his mother, I couldn't control him, but I thought he deserved to know he'd become the other man. If I were in his place, I'd want someone to tell me the truth. And if someone told me my partner was cheating, I'd end it instantly. But Kai's moral compass, it seems, worked differently. We kept living together for a bit, but the atmosphere became cold and strained. I lost respect for him. He still saw grace, and worse, seemed convinced I had feelings for him. Eventually, I packed my things and moved in with a friend. It turned out to be the best decision, even though it was far from work. As for my ex-husband, not long after the divorce was finalized, he got engaged to another woman. Right after I'd moved out, I hit rock bottom. There was chaos at school over AI and student essays. I was trying to build a new life in a place where I knew no one, and the loneliness was eating me alive. I tried a few dates, but they were all so mediocre I gave up, which somehow made the loneliness worse. And just when I thought things couldn't get any bleaker, my ex reached out. He told me about his engagement, his new life, and how happy he was. Said he was working on self-improvement and wanted to apologize in person. He promised it wasn't a date, that he expected nothing from me. I should have said no, but I was emotionally drained, and the idea of closure sounded like relief. So I agreed. At first, it was civil. We exchanged small talk. He even gave a genuine apology. But then he started asking questions. How was I doing? Was I seeing anyone? And when he realized I wasn't doing great, that smirk appeared. That same smug Cheshire grin I'd seen before. He started bragging about his new fiancée, about how beautiful she was, about how amazing his life had become. Then he said, "Honestly, our breakup was a blessing in disguise." It felt like a knife in my chest. All those years I'd given him, and he called them a burden. Eventually, I made some excuse and left. I wasn't invited to the wedding, obviously, and I regretted agreeing to meet him at all. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. After months of dragging myself through the days, I finally went on another date. That's when I met Chase, 29, bright, kind, a total goofball. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. I used to think I needed a brooding, mysterious man to balance my energy. But here's my advice. If you're a sunny person, don't look for someone dark to complete you. Find someone who shines with you. Chase makes me laugh every day. There are no fake conversations, no one-sided love, just two weird, happy people being completely themselves. We joke, we dream, we build new memories, and life finally feels alive again. Now it's 2025. I've got my own place near work. I even started going back to my old gym. And of course, that's where I saw Kai again. He didn't notice me first, but when he did, he came right up, apologized sincerely, and said he regretted how things ended. Told me he'd be glad if we could talk again someday. Maybe we will, maybe not. Honestly, he feels like a character from the first movie who suddenly shows up in the sequel, someone from a chapter that's long since closed. My life now feels completely different, with Chase, with my own home, with peace and laughter. Well, except for one thing, the lotion man. Yes, I finally showed Chase the infamous drawing. My hands were shaking, but I did it. He burst out laughing so hard he cried. Now it's become our little tradition. We've got the soap man, the ketchup man, the cream man, even the floor man. Don't ask. Everything with a doodled face becomes a character, and each has a ridiculous accent. And honestly, it's perfect. Life moves on. We heal, we grow, we laugh again. And the best part, I've stopped apologizing for who I am. Because if you shine too bright for the box you're in, the problem isn't your light, it's the box. So get out of it. I'll never apologize again for being myself.
Story 4. The Entitled Lady at Starbucks. A woman with an inflated ego decided that using mobile orders was unfair and demanded that I wait in line, even though my drink was already paid for and ready. I'm 28. There's a Starbucks conveniently located near my therapist's office, and over the past few months, I've gotten into the habit of grabbing a sugary drink before each session.
don't judge me. I know those 400-calorie whipped cream-topped sugar bombs aren't real coffee. But that overpriced $10 liquid dessert is my small comfort before diving into emotional self-improvement. Yesterday morning, on my way to therapy, I made a rare smart decision. I ordered ahead through the app to avoid the lunchtime rush. Perfect timing. 10 minutes later, I walked in just as the barista was finishing my pumpkin spice cold brew. She called my name, and I happily stepped forward to grab it. But before I could pick it up, a manicured hand gently landed on my forearm. The hand belonged to a woman who looked about 35, polished, confident, wrapped in a flawless linen suit. Her sleek ponytail, gold jewelry, and designer bag practically screamed, "I'm important." She exuded that unmistakable aura of superiority, chin slightly raised, posture perfect, as if she believed the air around her was more refined than everyone else's. For simplicity, let's call her Miss Entitlement. Her smile looked polite, but her tone was sugary sweet and condescending, like a teacher correcting a clueless child. "That's not yours," she said softly. I frowned, confused. I checked the cup. My name was written right there. "Oh, sorry. Do you have the same name? I think this one's mine. What did you order?" She shook her head, the smile tightening. "No, my name's much longer than that. I ordered a hot soy matcha with 2 pumps of vanilla." "Ah, then this definitely isn't yours," I said. "This one's a pumpkin spice cold brew. Maybe yours is still coming out. You could ask the barista." I reached for my cup again, but her manicured claws tightened around my arm. Her mask slipped, and that fake smile cracked. "I didn't say it was mine. I said it's not yours. I saw you walk in and grab the first drink you saw. You can't do that. You need to wait in line like everyone else." It finally clicked. "Oh, I ordered through the app," I explained. "It's prepaid and ready for pickup. See? I pulled up my confirmation email on my phone and showed her. Order placed 12 minutes ago, paid in full." She barely glanced at it before smacking my hand away, hard enough to leave a red mark. "You can't just walk in and take it," she hissed. "I don't care if it's your drink. It's not fair to everyone else who's waiting." I stood there, stunned. Did this stranger just hit me over a Starbucks order? Around us, maybe 8 people were waiting for their drinks, with another dozen still in line. She honestly thought I should wait behind all of them just to satisfy her warped sense of fairness? I locked eyes with the barista, who looked exhausted, the kind of weary look only years of customer service trauma can create. She sighed and approached us cautiously. "Hi, is there a problem here?" Before I could answer, Miss Entitlement jumped in. "Yes, this girl just walked in, grabbed a random drink, and won't wait her turn. Tell her to get back in line." I held up my phone. "That's not true. This is my drink. I ordered it through the app. Here's the confirmation, and the name matches the cup. Look." The barista double-checked my phone, glanced at the label, and nodded. "Yes, ma'am, this order is hers. She paid in advance." The entitled woman's jaw tightened. "I don't care if she paid. I've been waiting here like everyone else. She doesn't get special treatment." The barista's tone stayed calm but firm. Her order came through the mobile system earlier, so it was prepared in order of receipt. You're welcome to use the app next time to skip the line, but you can't stop other customers from collecting their drinks or use physical force. Please step aside or I'll have to ask you to leave. Miss Entitlement's face flushed crimson. "No, I want my drink, and she can wait like everyone else. Make my matcha first. I don't care if hers is done." I sighed. "I'm actually running late for an appointment, so can I just take my drink and go? Also, she hit me. There's a red mark on my arm. Maybe call security?" The barista nodded. "Yeah, I think that's best." Up until that moment, Miss Entitlement hadn't raised her voice. She'd been calmly dripping venom with that infuriatingly patronizing tone, like she thought we'd all eventually come to our senses and realize she was right. But when the barista finally handed me my drink, her composure shattered. Her face twisted with pure rage as she turned on the poor employee. "This is ridiculous. Your system is broken.
Do you have any idea who I am? You'll regret this. Get your manager now. And that, my friends, is how I got smacked in the hand by a Starbucks Karen because she doesn't understand how mobile orders work.
I didn't do anything wrong. I paid for my drink and I'm not going anywhere. I'll sit here and enjoy it. I have every legal right to do so, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. While the demon continued her tantrum, I glanced at the unflappable barista. She blinked heavily, and for a moment I thought she might actually cry. But then I realized this battle-hardened warrior was simply restraining the urge to roll her eyes. She met my gaze and gave a subtle nod toward the door. After years of surviving the front lines of customer service hell, she could handle this herself. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, letting me pass toward the exit. Just as I reached the door, Beelzebub, the elegant woman, realized her prey was escaping and screeched, "Hey, where do you think you're going? She can't just leave. Someone stop her. I said she has to wait her turn like everyone else." I raised a single finger in her direction and slipped out the back door just as the bell above the entrance jingled. A security guard had arrived. Beelzebub's righteous tirade immediately shifted gears. Now she was shouting that she had every right to be there, that she hadn't done anything wrong, and that she refused to be kicked out. She demanded her money back, a free matcha, and a formal apology, right now. Each sentence was punctuated by the sound of her slapping the counter. Her indignant screeching slowly faded behind the closing door as I walked away, holding my well-earned cold brew like a trophy. I like to imagine the guard didn't have to physically throw her out, though honestly, knowing her, she probably regained her composure, lifted her chin, and swept out like an insulted duchess, muttering something about her lawyer. As I sipped that heavenly pumpkin-spiced madness, I pictured a lonely venti soy matcha latte, extra hot, 2 pumps of vanilla, slowly cooling on the counter. And somewhere a decaffeinated Beelzebub was probably raging in her fancy office. That thought made every sip taste even sweeter. Wow, I didn't expect so many people to actually read this all the way through. I figured I'd take a minute to answer a few common questions that keep popping up in the comments. Yes, I'm Australian, and yes, this really happened here. About the infamous pumpkin-flavored monstrosity, I fully admit I have the world's worst taste in coffee, but drinking something that tastes like a scented candle has always been a weird little dream of mine. And you know what? Shockingly good. Props to America for that one. To those asking why I didn't stand up for myself, I'm a lover, not a fighter, meaning I literally can't fight. If I tried to punch her, I'd probably hurt my own hand more than her face. Plus, I didn't want to get banned from the only Starbucks I ever go to, or, get charged with assault. Why didn't I call the police? I was already late for therapy, and I didn't want to spend hours giving a statement. She didn't really hit me, more like a slap on the wrist that left a red mark for a while. No bruise, nothing worth reporting. Should I have thrown my drink on her? Absolutely not. I'd rather calmly sip my $9 coffee milkshake in peace. Besides, if I'd made a mess, the poor employees would have had to clean it, not her. Oh, and shout out to the guy who literally made a fake account just to send me a death threat because he didn't like my tone and thinks I'm a stuck-up witch. Honestly, kind of flattering. That's a lot of effort for one hate message. If you're reading this, send me your name and address. I promise I won't forward it to the cops. And finally, to everyone who made it this far, thank you. It's nice knowing someone actually reads this stuff. This was fun to write, but it's now 4 a.m. and I'm about to crash. Let's see what chaos tomorrow brings. Before we move on to the next story, I've got a question for you. What would you do in this situation? Actually, it reminded me of something that happened to me recently. It's kind of similar. I'd ordered a shawarma through an app, got a notification that it was ready, but when I arrived, I had no idea where to pick it up. The girl behind the counter was serving someone else, totally silent, and I just stood there waiting, confused. I finally asked, "Hey, can I pick up my shawarma?" And she just didn't answer. Awkward silence. I waited until she finished with the customer, asked again, and she finally handed it to me. I said, "You could have just said something."
And she replied, "Can't you see I'm serving someone?" Like, what? I was new there, didn't know how pickup worked, and she couldn't spare 2 words to clarify? Some people just really hate being mildly helpful. Anyway, what do you think? Was she totally right to ignore me? Or was that just bad customer service? Curious to hear your thoughts, because like in the Starbucks story, sometimes these wait your turn situations aren't as black and white as they seem.
Story 5.
I'm 25 and I've never been a fan of bras. They're uncomfortable, restrictive, and way too expensive for something I don't even feel I need. During the time I worked from home, I completely stopped wearing them, and honestly, I got used to it. It felt natural, freeing, and I didn't see any reason to go back. So when I returned to the gym, I didn't change that habit. I wear loose clothes anyway, usually oversized t-shirts, so it's not like I'm walking around showing anything off. Most of the time, you can't even tell the shape of my body under the fabric. No one had ever said anything before, so I assumed it wasn't a problem. Until one day, it suddenly became one. I was doing squats, fully focused, mid-set, when I felt someone tap my shoulder. I paused, annoyed already, and turned around to see a guy I'd never spoken to before. And then he said it. "You know people can see your nipples through your shirt, right?" For a second, I just stared at him. Not because I was embarrassed, but because I was trying to process the audacity. Why was he even looking there in the first place? And who interrupts someone in the middle of a lift just to point that out? I didn't respond. I turned back to finish my set. But before I could even rack the bar, he stepped in and grabbed it while I was coming up, forcing it back onto the rack. "I thought you were struggling," he said casually. I wasn't. That's when my irritation turned into anger. I told him clearly that I didn't need help. I had safety bars set up, I knew what I was doing, and I didn't ask for assistance. But instead of backing off, he kept talking. He said he came over to spot me, but then he noticed my chest and thought it was inappropriate. Inappropriate for who? Then came the part that really crossed the line. He told me I should wear a bra next time so other people wouldn't feel uncomfortable. And somehow, this part still makes no sense. He claimed it would help with my squat balance. At that point, I felt singled out. I was the only woman lifting in that section, and none of the guys around me were getting unsolicited advice or comments about their bodies. So I snapped. "You've got more chest than I do. Maybe you should wear a bra so no one gets distracted when you fail your lifts." His face turned red instantly. He started mumbling something about just trying to help, then called me a bitch and walked off. I stood there for a second, adrenaline still rushing, wondering if I'd gone too far, but also knowing he had no right to approach me like that in the first place. Edit. Just to clarify, because people always jump to conclusions, I don't wear revealing clothes at the gym. Quite the opposite. I usually wear oversized shirts. My actual size is XS, but I go for large when I work out. You can barely see anything through them. Maybe during certain movements, like squats with a belt, something becomes slightly noticeable, but that's it. I'm not showing off, I'm just working out. Update 1. A bit later, I actually started wearing bras again, but not because of him. I've been dealing with depression, and if I'm honest, I had stopped caring about my appearance altogether. Not just in the gym, everywhere. So putting in a little effort again, even something small like wearing proper workout gear, felt like a step toward getting my life back under control. That said, the guy didn't disappear. He still worked out at the same time as me. I avoided him, ignored him, didn't make eye contact. I just wanted peace. But a few days ago, that didn't last. I was filming my deadlifts to check my form when he came over again. You know sumo deadlifts are basically cheating, right? I ignored him. He repeated it, louder. Still ignored him. Then he noticed I was recording and started asking questions. If I had Instagram, if I posted my workouts, if he could follow me. I didn't respond. And then he smirked and said, "Your form's improved now that you're wearing a bra." That was it. Something in me just snapped. I turned around and went off on him, loud, no filter. I called him out for being creepy, inappropriate, and obsessed with my body. I don't even remember everything I said, but it was enough to make the entire gym go quiet. People were staring. A staff member rushed over and asked what was going on. I told them everything.
that he'd been bothering me for weeks and that I wanted to speak to the manager. Of course, he tried to play innocent, said he was just helping and that I was overreacting. But this time, I had proof. You could clearly hear what he said in the video I was recording. The manager reviewed it and sided with me. He got a 30-day ban with a warning that if he ever approached me again, he'd be permanently banned.
For the first time since everything started, I felt validated. Not just relieved, but actually heard. The manager didn't brush it off, didn't try to balance both sides, didn't tell me to ignore it. She took it seriously, and honestly, that meant more to me than the ban itself. For a few days after that, I kept expecting something. Awkward looks, whispers, tension, but none of it really happened. If anything, the atmosphere shifted in a subtle way. A couple of people who had been around during the incident gave me quiet nods of support. Nothing dramatic, no one made a scene, but it felt like they understood. And weirdly, that made me start noticing things I hadn't paid attention to before. The way some women constantly adjust their shirts between sets. How a few of them avoid the free weights area altogether and stick to machines. How many wear oversized hoodies, even when it's clearly too warm. It hit me that what happened to me wasn't rare. It's just usually ignored. Most people don't say anything. They just adapt, stay quiet, make themselves smaller. I guess I used to do the same in other situations. About a week later, the same staff member who stepped in that day came up to me again. She asked if everything had been okay since, and if I felt comfortable continuing to train there. We ended up talking for a few minutes. She told me that after my complaint, they'd had a discussion with the team about boundaries, about not tolerating unsolicited help, especially when it crosses into personal space or comments about someone's body. Apparently, this wasn't the first time that guy had made people uncomfortable. That part didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how long it probably took for someone to actually report it. After that conversation, something shifted in me. Not in a dramatic way, life-changing way, but enough. I stopped second-guessing myself, stopped wondering if I had overreacted, stopped replaying the moment in my head trying to make it smaller. Because I didn't overreact. He crossed a line, repeatedly, and I had every right to shut it down. A couple of weeks later, his band was still active, and honestly, I didn't even think about him much anymore. My focus went back to training. I started pushing myself more, adding weight, improving my form, being more consistent. Not to prove anything to anyone else, but because I finally felt comfortable again in that space. One evening, while I was finishing my workout, another guy, someone I'd seen around but never spoken to, walked past and said, "Hey, your lifts are really solid. Respect." That's it. No weird comments, no hidden meaning, just respect. And that felt different, clean, normal, the way it should be. As for me, I'm still figuring things out, mentally, emotionally, all of it. Some days are harder than others, but getting back into a routine, taking care of myself, even something as simple as showing up to the gym, it helps more than I expected. And yeah, I still don't love bras. But now, whether I wear one or not, that's my choice. Not because someone tried to shame me into it, not because someone made me feel uncomfortable, just mine. Final thought. I used to think situations like this weren't worth making a big deal about. Now, I get it. It's not about the comment. It's not about the bra. It's about boundaries. And once someone crosses them, you either let it slide, or you remind them they shouldn't have. Story 6. My wife and her best friend accused me of cheating and lost their minds when they found out I wasn't. I'm 31 and my wife is 29. About a year ago, we had our daughter. What should have been the happiest moment of our lives turned into something much heavier. The birth was traumatic, and not long after, my wife developed severe postpartum depression. Originally, she had planned to go back to work after maternity leave, but reality hit hard. The exhaustion, the emotional instability, the overwhelming pressure, it all became too much. After many long conversations, we decided together that she would stay home until our daughter turned 1, and then we would reevaluate.
She's been seeing a psychiatrist regularly, once a week, trying to manage everything. Since she stayed home, I had to step up financially. That meant longer hours, more responsibility, and less time at home. We discussed it thoroughly before making that decision. It wasn't forced, it was something we both agreed on. A few weeks ago, my boss offered me a major project. It required a lot of overtime, but it was a huge opportunity. More money, career growth, and recognition. I didn't accept immediately. I sat down with my wife, explained everything, and asked what she thought. She told me to take it. For the next 4 weeks, I worked almost non-stop. During that time, my mother-in-law and my wife's best friend, Jessie, stepped in to help with things I normally handled around the house. Jessie is a stay-at-home mom with 2 young kids, and she started coming over regularly during the day to help out. At first, everything seemed fine. About 3 weeks into the project, it became clear that we would need more time to finish. That evening, I came home, sat down with my wife, and explained the situation. She said she understood. No arguments, no tension. But over the next few days, something changed. She became distant, cold, quiet in a way that felt heavier than usual. At the time, I didn't think too much of it. Her mood had been unstable for months because of the depression, so I told myself not to take it personally. Then, during the final week of the project, everything fell apart. I came home one evening and saw Jessie still there. That wasn't unusual, so I greeted both of them and went to check on our daughter. But before I reached her room, I heard Jessie say something. "He doesn't even stop to talk to you properly anymore. That's a sign." I froze for a second. Then I turned around and asked what she meant. That's when everything exploded. My wife immediately started crying. Jessie didn't hesitate. She straight up accused me of cheating. She said I must resent my wife because of her postpartum depression, that I probably wasn't attracted to her anymore after she gained weight, that I was pulling away. None of it was true. I've been doing everything I can to support my wife. I never pressured her, never made her feel unwanted. If anything, I was trying to be patient, to give her space while she recovered. Then Jessie demanded to see my phone. I refused. Not because I had anything to hide, but because of how insane the situation was. It wasn't her place. She immediately said, "That proves it." So I looked at my wife and said calmly, "You can check my phone if you want." She nodded, and honestly, that moment broke something inside me. After everything we'd been through together, after everything I was doing for our family, she believed it was possible that I was cheating. She went through my phone. There was nothing. No messages, no hidden apps, no suspicious calls, nothing. But Jessie wasn't done. She started yelling that I must have deleted everything. Her voice got louder and louder until she woke up our daughter. That was it for me. I told her to get out. Eventually, she left. I went to calm down my daughter while my wife stayed on the couch crying. After our daughter fell back asleep, I sat next to my wife and tried to talk. I reminded her that we had discussed it beforehand, that she had supported my decision. She said it felt suspicious that the project had been extended. So I showed her everything, messages from work, emails, even payroll records confirming the overtime. She apologized. She said she trusted me again, but that Jessie had kept telling her these things were signs. I asked her one simple question. Why did you trust her more than me? She didn't answer. A couple of weeks later, the project ended. I reduced my workload to spend more time at home, but something wasn't right anymore. I felt exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. And deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that the trust between us had been damaged. I kept asking myself one thing. What happens next time?
A few days later, I realized I couldn't just ignore how I felt anymore. I was drained, confused, and honestly hurt in a way I couldn't fully explain. That evening, I told my wife I wanted to find a therapist. I didn't accuse her of anything. I didn't bring up the cheating accusations. I just said I was struggling and needed someone to talk to. She barely reacted. "Do whatever you want," she said, like it didn't matter at all. That response stayed with me longer than I expected. The next day, I came home from work, and the moment I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. The house was a mess.
Not just messy, destroyed. My office was completely torn apart, papers everywhere, drawers pulled out, personal items scattered across the floor. Even our bedroom wasn't spared. My heart dropped. Then I heard crying. Our daughter. She was alone in her room. My wife was gone. Her phone was off. In that moment, panic hit me harder than anything I'd felt in years. I started calling everyone I could think of, her parents, friends. No one had seen her. I called my mom, asking her to come over immediately so I could go look for my wife. But before my mom even arrived, the front door opened. My wife walked in. Her eyes were red. Her face was tense, like she had been holding everything in for too long. Outside, through the window, I saw Jessie sitting in the car. She didn't even come inside. I asked my wife what happened, thinking maybe someone had broken in. But instead of answering, she started screaming, accusing me again. This time, even worse. She said my visits to a therapist were just an excuse to meet another woman. I tried to calm her down. I told her none of it was real. None of it made sense. And then she hit me. Hard. I didn't even register the pain at first, just the shock. Then I felt blood. My nose was broken. And just like that, everything went silent. She stopped, sat down, and stared at the wall like nothing had happened, like she wasn't even there anymore. I didn't waste time. I grabbed my daughter, locked us in her room, and called my mom again, explaining everything as fast as I could. When she arrived, we packed a bag and left immediately. My wife didn't even look at us. We dropped my daughter off at my dad's house, and then my mom took me to the ER. I remember sitting there, covered in blood, realizing how far things had gone. This wasn't just arguments anymore. This was dangerous. For now, my daughter and I stayed with my parents. My wife went to stay with hers. I started thinking about legal steps, possibly a restraining order, especially against Jessie, and separation. I still loved my wife, but I couldn't ignore what happened. I couldn't risk my child's safety. I told myself I would wait, give her time to get help, to stabilize. Maybe there was still a chance to fix things. But life didn't give us that chance. 3 days later, everything ended. My wife died. She crashed her parents' car into a tree. Just like that, gone. And the worst part? She truly believed I had been cheating on her. A lie that was never real. A lie that someone kept feeding her until it became her reality. Jessie came to see me the day after. She was crying, saying she loved my wife too, saying she wanted to speak at the funeral, that she had already discussed it with my in-laws. I told her no, immediately. There was no way I could stand there and listen to her speak, knowing what she had done. We argued. She said, "You're not the only one who cared about her." Maybe that's true, but caring about someone doesn't mean destroying them. Now my in-laws are pressuring me. They say Jessie was part of her life for years, that she deserves to speak. And I understand their grief. I really do. But every time I imagine her standing there, talking about my wife like she didn't play a role in what happened, I feel sick, physically sick. My mind is exhausted. My emotions are all over the place. Even my parents can't agree what I should do right now. And I don't trust myself to make the right decision right now. So I'm asking, if you were in my place?
Then she walked away, like I was a stranger. Meanwhile, the rest of the family is splitting apart. Some relatives fully support me and are disgusted by Mom and Emmy's behavior. Others say I'm being too harsh and should just give them money to keep the peace. My cousin Jack even yelled at me during a family dinner, saying this whole situation is my fault. That dinner was supposed to be about remembering Dad. Instead, it turned into a fight. My Aunt Sarah even made passive-aggressive comments about people forgetting where they came from once they get money. I left early just to avoid things escalating further. This is my reality now, and honestly, it feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. Update number 2. That family dinner ended in complete chaos. My Uncle Pete, Dad's brother, snapped back at Jack, saying some people never learn the value of hard work. Jack started shouting, and everything spiraled from there. As for me, I've thrown myself completely into the business. Dad built it from nothing, and I'm not going to let it fall apart. Thankfully, most of the employees have been incredibly supportive. Many of them have known me since I was a kid, and they keep sharing stories about Dad that remind me why I'm doing all of this. One moment hit especially hard. Jim, the same employee Dad gave a second chance to years ago, came into my office with a stack of old photos. Company events, holidays, store openings. In every single one, there was Dad, working, smiling, present. Jim looked at me and said, "This is who your father was. This is what you're fighting for." I can't even describe how much that meant. But the pressure is real. I barely sleep, I've lost weight. People keep telling me I look exhausted. My days are nothing but lawyers, documents, and constant damage control. Sometimes I look in the mirror and don't even recognize myself. And yeah, sometimes I wonder if it's even worth it. The worst part is the doubt. Should I just pay them and end this? Would that be easier? But then I remember Dad trusting me with everything he built, and I know I can't betray that. Tom keeps reminding me this is a marathon, not a sprint. So now I'm documenting everything, every rumor, every ignored message, every attempt I've made to resolve things peacefully. We're also collecting statements from longtime employees, proof of how the business really grew, especially after the divorce, to shut down Mom's claims once and for all.
Story 7.
They want us to follow a dress code at school? Nope, I'll wear whatever I want. A little background for context. I've never been a fan of dress codes just for the sake of having them. So when I got into a boarding school that didn't require uniforms, I was thrilled. Honestly, I don't even hate dress codes in principle. My problem is always with how people interpret them. For example, if the rules say socks should be black or blue, 99.9% of people will assume it means navy blue. I'm the kind of person who show up in sky blue socks just to prove a point. Not to make trouble, but simply to share a sly grin with a handful of people who think, well, it does just say blue. It's my way of reminding the bureaucrats who wrote the rules that they aren't as airtight as they think. As my husband likes to say, I've always been a bit of a pain in the neck. I enjoy showing that either or isn't the only option. I've always dressed boldly, loved unusual combinations of fabrics and colors, and if someone had encouraged me to learn sewing back then, I probably would have become a fashion designer. But boarding school is hardly a place full of vibrant creativity. Despite being spirited, I was never a troublemaker. My mom used to describe me as a polite, well-behaved kid who could bend rules into a pretzel without ever technically breaking them. She had to word her rules very carefully whenever she left me home alone, but she also had to be cautious not to give me new ideas in the process. If someone presented a rule as unbreakable, I just had to test it, and if they were pushy or smug about it, I'd find the cleverest way possible to prove them wrong. My mom always believed critical thinking was the real key to success in life. She taught me that if you can analyze a problem and figure out a solution, you don't need to have all the answers memorized, you just need to know how to find them. Remember, this was a decade before Google and smartphones, so I don't fault modern parents for having a different mindset. Still, I'd raise my own kids with the same philosophy if I had them. She raised me to believe success comes to people who don't just answer apple when someone asks what that round red thing on the table is. Instead, you pick it up, study its weight and texture, notice the sheen on its wax, memorize its smell, because you never know when someone will ask you to describe the underside of an apple when there isn't one around. And when you grow up thinking that way, turning school dress codes inside out becomes kind of fun. So, here's the actual story. At my boarding school, we had 2 dress codes. The first was called the class dress code, and it basically meant we were expected to look like young professionals. Pretty standard stuff, skirts below fingertip length for girls, shirts and ties for boys, and all the usual details. The second set was for downtime, called city dress. That was for when we hung out in the student lounge or went off campus. It was more relaxed, but still had enough restrictions to prevent the girls from wearing anything too revealing or the boys from dressing like slobs in ripped clothes.
Now, I had these suede knee-high fringe boots. Actually, I had two pairs, one black and one brown. They were the warmest, most comfortable boots I'd ever owned, even before Uggs became a thing. My mom and I had fought over those boots for years, so it was a huge personal victory when she let me bring them to school. One day, a teacher pulled me aside and told me the faculty had been discussing my boots and decided they didn't fit the class dress code. But I read the rules, I argued. There's nothing in there about boots like these. I know, she admitted, but we've decided they don't fit the image we want. But the color matches, I know. The material's fine too, suede is allowed. Yes, the rules don't mention height. Riding boots are permitted, right? That's true. So why then? I demanded. I honestly can't tell if I felt more angry or hurt. Probably both. This teacher was someone I respected, someone who had always been kind to me, and I immediately understood why they sent her to talk to me instead of someone else, because I wasn't the type to throw a tantrum or cause a scene. I was the type to plan my revenge quietly. All right then, I said calmly, and walked away. That night, I studied the dress code rules word for word, line by line. I read through every single sentence of that dress code over and over again. I even said the rules out loud, picked up every piece of clothing listed, and examined it like I was some alien who only had this manual and a piece of fabric to figure out why humans wear these things. I had to admit it was a strict code, but they made two big mistakes. First, nowhere did it say where each piece of clothing had to be worn. Second, there was no mention that you even had to look presentable. The rules only specified colors and lengths, skirts below fingertip length, socks above the ankle, sleeves covering elbows, and so on. Shoes had to be in muted tones, black, brown, or other earthy shades like my fringe boots, but nowhere did it say you couldn't show up and say elf shoes. Of course, elf shoes wouldn't exactly scream professional, but still, loophole. I went to bed that night mad as hell, my head buzzing with mischievous ideas. I debated with myself for a long time whether I should even go through with it, but eventually I decided if I still felt the same way in the morning, I'd start phase 1. The next day, I woke up just as annoyed, and on my way to breakfast, I mentally made a list of the biggest clowns in my class. In the cafeteria, I found a couple of them and told them, you know, the handbook is very specific about how ties must be knotted, Windsor, single, or double, and if it's a bow tie, it has to be tied in the classic way, but nowhere does it say ties have to be worn on the neck. The rule just says they must be properly tied. I suggested they read it carefully that evening and decide for themselves what to do with that little loophole. The following day, ties were everywhere. On wrists, wrapped around glasses, tied across foreheads, looped around ankles, knees, thighs, even wrapped around fists like someone was stopping a nosebleed. If you could tie a Windsor knot on some body part, one of the boys in our school had done it. I was ridiculously proud of myself. Phase 1 was a total success. The teachers were irritated, of course, though plenty of students found it hilarious, until math class. One boy came in without a visible tie. He was the one who always wore a bow tie. The teacher looked down at him sternly and said, "I know you all decided to play games with ties today. I think we've been patient enough, but you do know the rules say you have to be wearing one." He grinned, looked her in the eye, and replied, "I am, you just can't see it." The room exploded with laughter. Maybe he really did tie it around his ankle under his pants, or around his elbow under the blazer. Who knows? But to the rest of us, he instantly became the guy who wore his tie on his junk. By the end of the day, I was considered the legend who had found the loophole, and he was the legend who took it to, well, the most infamous possible place. The very next morning, the school email newsletter had an announcement. The rules had been updated. Ties must now be worn only on the neck. Fun times were officially over. But phase 2, oh, that was the real challenge. I'd been eyeing the most ridiculous pair of boots I'd ever seen at the mall. They were silver with holographic rainbow circles all over, had a 5-centimeter platform, a chunky 10-centimeter heel, and lace-up fronts that came just above the ankle. Utterly outrageous. I knew there was no way I could get away with wearing them to class, but for city dress, I wanted them so bad. After 9 years of uniforms, I was finally starting to enjoy fashion. I'd been saving money for months and would sneak into that store whenever I could just to look at them. For a while, I tried to convince myself they were too expensive, but once they banned my favorite suede fringe boots, my desire for those wild rainbow boots only grew stronger. Eventually, I scraped together enough money. It felt like fate. That weekend, I practically skipped to the mall, grinning from ear to ear, only to find they were sold out in my size. I nearly burst into tears. But then, right next to them, I saw the same design in black patent leather. Until that moment, I'd dismissed the black pair as boring, especially compared to the silver ones. But here's the thing. Our dress code had a whole paragraph about patent leather shoes. They were allowed, but only if worn with pants. Why? Because of that absurd old belief that shiny shoes could reflect a girl's underwear if she wore a skirt.
So my rainbow boots? Absolutely banned. But their black patent leather sisters with silver accents? Perfectly legal. Silver detailing was allowed since shoelace eyelets could be made of metal. And the 5-centimeter platform and 10-centimeter heel also fine. There wasn't even a height restriction for heels in the dress code. I guess the school assumed no high school girl would willingly spend an entire day in stilettos. And unlike the shiny rainbow boots, their black patent leather version looked less like party footwear and more like ankle boots a gumma would wear. Funny thing is, I never would have even glanced at those black boots if it weren't for my newly discovered obsession with the dress code. The outfit started with these bright orange polyester pants covered in tiny gray-green amorphous specks, something that vaguely resembled a microscopic giraffe print. The green was barely visible. From a distance, it just looked like some random texture over the orange. The clash between the two colors was so aggressive that the pattern literally seemed to vibrate, making you dizzy and even a little nauseous if you stared too long. By sheer luck, I'd also managed to grab an orange terry sweater in exactly the same shade. The result? From the waist up, I looked like a rejected Sesame Street character, while from the waist down, I resembled a disco-era misfit. Did I mention the pants were slightly flared? So on Monday, I walked into class looking like someone who'd been thrown off the set of Saturday Night Fever. My new platform boots had these heavy wooden heels that clumped so loudly they echoed through the entire building. Suddenly, I was towering a good 10 centimeters over everyone else, more noticeable in the hallways, and even rivaling some teachers in terms of sheer presence. I caught a few of them throwing sideways glances at my boots, and I started keeping mental notes on which staff members apparently had it out for my suede knee-highs. It was obvious who found my appearance ridiculous. But I didn't stop there. It turned into a personal mission to curate the most hideous outfits my imagination could come up with. I didn't care how I looked anymore. I just wanted to make sure each piece still technically complied with the dress code. Even the teachers admitted my boots met the written requirements. They just didn't like them. I'd put effort into following their rules, and suddenly it wasn't good enough, simply because my choices weren't to their taste. So fine. If they didn't like my boots, I'd wear ugly boots every single day, forcing them to stare at outfits that nobody in their right mind would find appealing. And what could they do? Tell me daily that my clothes were wrong while failing to explain how? By their own admission, nothing I wore actually broke the rules, and I wasn't about to start breaking them. That's not my style. Living in a dorm had its perks. Girls shared clothes freely, so as long as you were willing to lend your stuff too, you essentially had access to 30 wardrobes just in our block alone. My own clothes had been carefully coordinated, but once you started mixing them with other people's, the results became gloriously absurd. Like when my roommate's loud neon blouse, which she only ever wore with a black skirt, ended up paired with another girl's skirt in a clashing wild print. I wore it specifically because the colors screamed at each other. Still, not against the rules. Those scandalous slut boots, I only ever paired them with pants. I raided every thrift store, vintage shop, and second-hand place in town. And since our city had no shortage of hippies, the selection was fantastic. I put together 3-piece suits with ties that made me look so boyish that at a parent-teacher meeting, one of the teachers actually asked my mom if I was gay. Apparently, dressing badly meant you were automatically gay. I'd braid my bangs into a thin plait,
clip a heavy earring to the end so it dangled, and then swing it back and forth over my desk or book only during the lessons of the teachers I suspected of discriminating against my boots. Basically, I did everything I could to annoy them with my appearance. At that infamous parent-teacher conference, they asked my mom to talk to me about my clothes. She blinked and asked if I was breaking any rules. They explained the boots situation. My mom laughed and told them there was nothing they could do. If there's one thing her daughter hated, it was being punished for a rule she didn't know existed, or worse, one that had never even been written down. If you want to make a new rule right now to stop her, go ahead. By tomorrow, she won't be doing this anymore. I promise you won't see those boots again. But the way she'll see it, you've taken away something she liked for no good reason. That's punishment, whether you call it that or not. And if she feels punished unfairly, she punishes back. Simple as that. My advice, drop it and spend the summer rewriting your handbook. Otherwise, you'll burn through paper trying to keep up with all the loopholes she's going to find. My daughter lives for finding loopholes. Honestly, I regret giving her so many puzzle books when she was little. Hearing this, the teachers admitted the only real reason they were ignoring my new boots was this. When the teachers saw how I reacted to the suede boots ban, some of them honestly seemed afraid to imagine what I might show up with next if they tried to outlaw the second pair as well. But being the well-behaved student that I actually was, I never wore those suede boots again. And after that, no one ever gave me grief about my outfits. Well, except for one time when my skirt ended up way too short. That one wasn't even intentional. The following year, I didn't return to that school, but for completely unrelated reasons, so I never found out if they rewrote any of their rules. To this day, I've kept those black boots. They're still tucked away somewhere, and every time I stumble across them at the bottom of a box, I can't help but smile. I even held on to a t-shirt from that era. It is, without exaggeration, the single ugliest piece of clothing I own, but I just can't throw it out. Every time I see it in my closet, I start laughing, remembering the whole saga. Somewhere, I've even got photos of me in that ridiculous fuzzy orange getup. If I ever dig them out, I'll definitely share them. Back then, I was having the time of my life breaking their so-called dress code, and it felt amazing. So here's the takeaway. Whatever problems you're facing, try flipping them inside out. Look at them from a different angle, twist them around, play with them. You never know where the cracks might be hiding. And of course, this is also just another wonderful story about how amazing my mom was. She always had my back. Though, if I'm honest, I suspect she was also quietly angry that the teachers hated our boots. Because if the school rules were clearly written, she could have been wearing them all along. Instead, those awesome boots just sat gathering dust in my locker. I miss you, Mom. Edit. No, I didn't end up becoming a lawyer. Life just went in a different direction. These days, I work for myself, building a business in a field I'm genuinely passionate about. I enjoy almost every minute of it. I'm happy and I'm grateful that I get to love what I do. One last note. This whole story took place in the mid-90s.
Story 8.
I nearly lost $900,000 during my divorce, but instead, I destroyed my cheating wife in court with shocking evidence. I work as an elementary school teacher, so my daily routine is very predictable. I have fixed hours at school, and every Tuesday we usually had staff meetings that ended around 6 p.m. That meant I normally got home by 7. My wife, Terry, whom I had been married to for over 30 years, would go to the gym every Tuesday evening. She always came back exhausted, so I usually prepared dinner while she showered and handled the house chores. But one day, my principal surprised us by canceling the meeting. It was only 3:30 p.m., and I thought it would be a great idea to head home early, cook dinner, and maybe catch up on some household tasks. Lately, I'd noticed Terry becoming more distant, and I hoped a candlelit dinner might help rekindle some spark between us. Our marriage had been strained by financial troubles, and I could feel her pulling away more and more. She wanted to control everything, and if things didn't go her way, she would become stubborn and irritable. I always thought of myself as patient, but it was starting to wear me down. When I got home, I noticed her car in the garage. That was strange because she usually took the bus to the gym. I slipped in quietly through the back door. The first thing I saw was her purse sitting on the kitchen counter. Terry was always meticulous about where she placed her things, so this was odd. Then I noticed her workout clothes and a large towel on the floor. Just as confusion set in, I heard noises coming upstairs. My first thought was that she might not be feeling well, so I cautiously started up the stairs. That's when I stumbled over a pair of men's shoes. Scattered on the steps were pants, a shirt, socks, and worst of all, Terry's lingerie, the kind she only wore for anniversaries or special nights. My blood ran cold. I froze on the stairs, heart pounding, stomach turning. For a moment, I might faint. I sat down, trembling. Then anger began to boil inside me, an emotion I rarely allowed to take control. Years of teaching had given me patience, but this was beyond anything I could manage. I moved quietly toward the bedroom. To reach it, you had to pass through the walk-in closet. The door was cracked open just enough for me to see inside. And there it was, my wife, my partner of 3 decades, the mother of our children, betraying me in our own bed. I pulled out my phone and hit record. I knew I would need proof, not just for myself, but for the storm that was about to follow. Watching it unfold before my eyes was like living through a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Terry, the woman who claimed to love me, who volunteered at charities, who acted like the perfect wife, was now just another liar. I couldn't watch anymore. I stopped recording, slipped out of the house, and just walked aimlessly. Eventually, I ended up in a park miles away. I sat on a bench, splashed some water on my face, and played the video back. The sound was low so nearby kids wouldn't hear, but on that screen was the collapse of my marriage, my family, my entire life. And there in the park, I broke down and cried. By the time I got back home, it was around 7 p.m., my usual return time on meeting days. Terry greeted me at the back door with fake concern. "Honey, are you okay? You look so pale. What happened? Do you want me to get you something to drink?" Her eyes were full of feigned worry, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. My voice shook as I muttered, "Not really. I think it's just my stomach. I'm gonna take a shower and sleep it off." "All right, but take a bucket in case you throw up. I don't want to ruin the clean sheets," she said casually. That almost broke me. Those clean sheets had already been ruined, stained by betrayal. I replied more firmly, "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight." And that's exactly what I did. For the next few days, I pretended to be unwell. She went on with life as if nothing had happened, while I carried the weight of the recording in my pocket, the evidence that my marriage was nothing but ashes. When Monday came, I finally decided what to do next. I needed answers. Was this just a one-time betrayal, or had it been going on for a while? The next morning, I told the school principal that I had to undergo an unexpected medical procedure and wouldn't be able to teach for a few days. A substitute was arranged, which gave me the freedom I needed. On Tuesday, I left home as usual, but parked several streets away, then walked back quietly, cutting through neighbors' yards. I knew all the back routes and moved carefully so no one would notice me. I slipped into our detached garage and changed into casual clothes and soft shoes to keep silent. Then came the waiting. I remembered that the last time I'd come home early, there hadn't been any strange cars parked outside. That meant her lover probably came on foot. I crouched behind the hedge and bushes near our front entrance, hidden but with a clear view of the door. Terry carried on her morning as if everything was normal. Washing dishes, starting the dishwasher, vacuuming, dusting. Around 11:30, she went upstairs. I heard the shower running, followed by the toilet flushing. After about 45 minutes, she came back down and left the front door slightly open, an unspoken invitation for her guest. It didn't take long. Around 1:30, he showed up. I didn't know who he was at first, but I managed to capture about 10 seconds of video on my phone. It showed his side profile and almost a clear shot of his face. He didn't hesitate. He just walked straight into my house.
The first words I heard froze me in place. "I hope you're wearing that workout outfit again." "Of course," Terry replied with a giggle. "You always loved when I put it on. Sometimes I think that's what hooked you in the first place." That was all I needed. Their comfort with each other screamed of a long-term affair. They headed upstairs without a care in the world. I returned to the garage, my heart pounding out of my chest. My head was spinning with questions. Who was this man? How long had this been going on? And why hadn't she ever talked to me about anything? What terrified me more was the thought of my health. They hadn't used protection, at least not that I could see. The idea that she might have put me at risk made my stomach churn. I thought back to her years at the gym, the social circle of married women she had joined, and the charity events. Maybe the gym held the answers.
Update 1. Being a teacher came with one big advantage. I had access to printers and other resources. I decided to start by printing still frames from the video I had taken. Identifying him was now my top priority. On Thursday, when Terry was supposed to go to the gym again, I suggested going with her. I claimed I was thinking about getting a membership myself, especially since school was on break. She immediately grew uncomfortable and tried to talk me out of it. "It's really just a group of wives who chat more than work out," she insisted. But I didn't budge. So that Thursday, I walked into the gym with her. The moment I stepped inside, it felt like a scene from an old Western. Everyone turned to stare at me, whispering among themselves. Terry was visibly on edge, sneaking nervous glances toward the staff area. I tried to distract myself by walking around the facility. It was the usual setup, rows of machines, mirrors on the walls. Near the exit, I noticed a staff board with photos and contact info. At the top was the owner and director, Ms. Elizabeth West, followed by 2 women and 1 man. My blood went cold. The man was him, the lover. Under his photo, Philip Barnes, head of training programs, personal coach. As I memorized his number, I looked back toward the machines. Terry was gone. Panic struck me until I spotted her a few minutes later in a hushed but desperate conversation with none other than Philip. She stood partly hidden behind weight equipment, gesturing for him to leave. Then she quickly returned to her machine as if nothing had happened. She didn't realize I'd seen it all. I sat there, burning with rage, trying to keep my composure. When she came back over, she noticed my pale face and asked softly, "Are you okay? Is your blood sugar still low?" "I'm fine now. Are you ready to leave?" Before she could answer, the director's voice echoed through the loudspeaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, the last training session of the day is canceled. Mr. Barnes suddenly felt unwell and had to go home." A wave of disappointment swept through the women in the gym. But I wasn't disappointed. For me, it only confirmed everything. Update 2. It seemed that workouts with Mr. Bont were a cornerstone for many women at that gym. That alone made me think this needed deeper investigation. When I glanced at Terry, she didn't show much reaction to the announcement of his sudden illness, but I could swear I saw her shoulders relax, as if a huge weight had been lifted. "Let's go," she said quickly, snatching her towel and gym bag from the storage area where everyone left their things during class. We were just stepping out when a woman approached us, someone I didn't immediately recognize. "Such a shame we couldn't finish today's session properly," she commented to Terry. Terry gave a brief "agreed" and headed toward the car, clearly signaling that she had no interest in chatting further. "See you later," she tossed over her shoulder before sliding into the car faster than I'd ever seen her move. The ride home was silent. Terry leaned her head back, closed her eyes, and deliberately slowed her breathing as though calming herself. She looked serene, almost too serene, and I couldn't help but think maybe I could use this relaxed moment to probe deeper. "That was a pretty interesting workout, dear. The place is really well equipped. No wonder you've stayed so toned all these years." "Thanks, honey," she replied softly. "You're absolutely right. The program's great, and I enjoy being there. The women are friendly, too. Too bad Mr. Bont wasn't around today." She caught herself too quickly, correcting, Philip Bont. He usually finishes every session with those tough exercises that really push us to the limit. It's always disappointing when he's not around." Inside, my stomach twisted. I knew all too well how far he had been pushing her body, but outwardly I only muttered, maybe he'll be better by next Thursday. The thought of their next intimate encounter made me sick, but I shoved it down. The following week, I had playground duty at school during pickup time. For those unfamiliar, it's chaos. Kids rushing out, chatting with friends, scanning for parents, while we teachers try to keep order until each child is collected. Near the end of pickup, a car pulled up, and I instantly recognized the driver. It was the same woman who had tried speaking to Terry in the gym. "Hello," she said nervously. "Sorry, I'm new to all this and lost track of the time. My son Timothy's here, right?" That wasn't unusual. New parents often struggled with pickup procedures. I reassured her I'd get Timothy, while colleagues covered the remaining kids. I found him near his classroom, chatting with another student. "Hey Tim, your mom's here. Let's head to the pickup area." He looked puzzled. He was in the last year of elementary school, old enough to not lose track of time. "That's weird," he muttered. "Mom's usually busy with her fitness instructor on Friday afternoons. Back at my old school, she often didn't come until 5:30. The word fitness instructor hit me like a hammer. My heart pounded as I casually asked, "Oh, that's great she takes care of her health. Do you happen to know his name?" "Yeah, it's Bont or something like that. He works at the local gym but also does private lessons at home. That's who I want to be when I grow up. Mom always seems so happy and relaxed after training with him. We usually order takeout on Fridays because she doesn't have time to cook." I nearly lost my composure. This man wasn't just entangled with my wife, he was messing around with multiple women in town. Back at the car, his mother thanked me warmly for helping. "Not a problem," I said smoothly. "Part of the job. By the way, I don't think we've officially met. I'm Gerard D. Kids just call me Mr. D." "Nice to meet you," she replied, shaking my hand. "I'm Mary Jones. I remember seeing you at the gym last Thursday. You were with your wife, Terry. Sorry she seemed in such a hurry to leave. It looked like Mr. Bont's absence threw everything off." The moment she said his name, her entire demeanor shifted. She paled, her hands trembled, and she stammered, well, Mr. D, see you later," before practically fleeing the parking lot. That sealed it. Bont wasn't just a trainer. He was a serial predator in our community.
Update 3. It was time to think about my future, and in that vision there was no Terry. Rage gave me clarity. I began reviewing all the small but crucial details of our shared life, the sort of things couples often overlook. Who pays which bills? Which insurance company do we use? When are utilities due? From which account do we make automatic payments? I discovered the mortgage had only a small balance left. My retirement account had grown to an impressive $900,000 thanks to mandatory contributions from our teachers' union. Our savings account, intended for an overseas vacation, held about $30,000. That trip was no longer on the table. My priority became draining it before Terry realized I knew about her betrayal. Quietly, I engineered a series of appliance breakdowns while she wasn't home. I'd unplug a cord, then claim a repairman had come to fix it, paying in cash. In reality, I pocketed the money and repaired it myself. Over time, I gathered nearly $20,000 this way. I also purchased tools and other necessities to prepare for what was coming. Update 4. I always paid cash for everything, showing the receipts to Terry, then secretly returning the items the next day. Dishonest? Absolutely. But honesty and trust had already been gutted from our marriage. Because of her actions, I was becoming a man I never thought I could be, a liar. Her Thursday daytime workouts with Bante continued, and I no longer bothered even trying to initiate anything intimate with her. We coexisted like roommates. That was it. Quietly, I began boxing up my personal belongings, keeping them stored in the garage where Terry rarely went. Since her car usually sat outside, the garage was basically my territory, and she didn't notice my gradual disappearance.
On the rare occasion she did ask about missing items, I told her they'd broken or that I didn't need them anymore. She accepted those answers, mostly because many of my things didn't fit her preferred aesthetic anyway. When most of my possessions were gone and the house looked practically unchanged, I realized how much I'd already surrendered to Terry's control over the years. I withdrew what I could from my retirement account and bought a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny yard, and a garage, but it was mine, close to the school where I worked, and best of all, the mortgage was small enough that half my salary easily covered the payments. No mansion, no luxury, but solid. Amazing what you can find if you're willing to skip the glossy neighborhoods. I moved my belongings in piece by piece. Furniture wasn't a problem. Secondhand shops and donation centers were full of cheap finds. Honestly, the place reflected my own state, used but still standing. It was time for everyone to get what they deserved. One afternoon at school pickup, Mary Jones came over to me again. Her son Timothy was playing nearby, but I immediately noticed she looked shaken, as if she had been crying. As a teacher, you get trained to read those signs. "Mr. D, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, her voice wavering. "Of course. Just park over there and meet me at the benches." I always joked that those benches near the pickup zone were my office. She parked, then joined me while Timothy kicked a ball around. She hesitated, then finally began. "I don't know how much you know about what's been happening at the gym." I kept my face steady. "I know Terry, my wife, enjoys it there, says it keeps her in shape." She bit her lip, clearly wrestling with herself. Then she blurted out, "There are things you need to know." I cut to the chase. "Does this have to do with Philip Bonte?" Her expression hardened instantly. "You have no idea just how much it has to do with that pig." "I can imagine," I replied carefully, "but go on." Tears welled in her eyes. "It targets women at the gym, regulars. He watches, waits, and then pounces." I asked how she knew. She looked away, ashamed. "Because I was one of them, until last month. We met every Friday at 12:30. Her voice faltered as though reliving it. She confessed how she had believed there could be a future with him. Divorced, lonely, missing intimacy, Bonte had filled a void, until suddenly another woman replaced her. He dropped her cold with nothing but a half-hearted, "Sorry, can't anymore." She gave a bitter laugh through tears. "I thought I was special. Turns out I was just another notch." I sat stunned. How could she unload this on me, her child's teacher? She must have been truly desperate. Trying to offer some comfort, I murmured, "Relationships aren't always what they seem." Her eyes narrowed, searching my face. Then she whispered, "You already know, don't you, about him and Terry?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, I know." Mary reached for my arm. "Then please believe me, he'll keep doing this until someone stops him. He doesn't care who he hurts, as long as his ego's fed. He even brags about it at bars with his buddies." Her tone sharpened. "If you need my help to make him pay, just say the word. That man deserves to be brought down." She called for Timothy and drove off, leaving me in silence.
I sat there, mind racing. Oddly, I felt a flicker of relief. Her confession made my plan for revenge seem less like an act of a betrayed husband and more like a moral obligation. Bonte wasn't just wrecking my life, he was a predator preying on countless women. The question now was, how many more? I started piecing together his schedule. The gym was open every day except Mondays, and he seemed to be there constantly. Using the number listed at the gym, I tracked down his address, just 3 blocks from our house. No wonder it was so easy for him to sneak over for sessions with my wife. I told Terry that my doctor had recommended daily evening walks around 5 p.m. Luckily, she showed no interest in joining me. That gave me the perfect cover. Since I knew it wouldn't interfere with her own meetings, everything went smoothly. During my first evening walk, I headed straight to Bonte's address and discovered that he lived in a ground-floor apartment among several similar buildings. His car wasn't there, so I lingered nearby to catch his return.
He usually left our house well before 6 p.m., which meant he almost always came back around that time. Sure enough, at exactly 6 p.m., he walked into his apartment. It became a routine, day after day, whenever I was free to go out. On days I had staff meetings and couldn't leave, I assumed he still followed the same pattern. I began to suspect that his evenings at the gym weren't really about exercise, but about meeting different women. To confirm this, I adjusted my schedule, starting my walks earlier and watching his daily movements more closely. Eventually, I decided to take a full week off from work just to investigate. I went to an electronics store and purchased surveillance equipment, a long-range listening device, motion-triggered HD cameras with audio, and an external hard drive for storage. On Monday, after setting everything up, I installed the first camera inside Bonte's apartment. Luckily, his place was small, almost like a studio with a kitchenette and dining space. One camera was enough to cover the entire living area, except the bedroom. Breaking in was shockingly easy. He hid his keys under the doormat. Careless. All I had to do was wait for him to head to the gym, slip inside, place the camera, and leave. From then on, every sound or movement in Bonte's apartment was recorded and streamed straight to my laptop, time-stamped and secure. That same evening, I got my first footage, Bonte eating takeout in front of the TV before heading to bed at 9 p.m. The next day, I slipped into the gym through the back entrance after closing time and set up a second camera in a private room where clients were usually assessed. This was the same room Bonte often used for one-on-one sessions. By Wednesday, when Terry went out shopping, I had already installed the third and fourth cameras, one in our bedroom and another in the living room. Reviewing Tuesday's recordings shocked me, though deep down I wasn't surprised. Bonte woke up, went out for breakfast, then came back and made a phone call. "Julie, hey, it's me. He's gone. See you at 12:30. Wear what I told you. Don't worry, I'll be careful. No one will see me come over. You said he's out for 3 days? Perfect. I'll come Thursday and Friday too. We'll talk later. Love you." He hung up with a spring in his step, practically glowing. On Thursday, I set up in the garage with my laptop, waiting. As expected, the camera caught him returning with breakfast again, then calling Terry. She answered, "Good thing my husband left for work. See you at 12:30 like always." That was the breaking point. Later, I asked Mary, Terry's mother, to help me compile a list of all the women Bonte had been involved with in the past. She attacked the task with energy, and within a week, I had names and addresses. To my horror, Terry's name was on that list too. At this point, our house meant nothing to me. It wasn't a home anymore, just a building. Terry noticed the emptiness, but I brushed it off, saying I was reorganizing my things. Meanwhile, I secretly prepared for the end. I met with a divorce attorney, set up new bank accounts and insurance under my name only, moved our vacation savings to my private account, and switched to a new SIM card. I even changed the beneficiaries of my retirement plan to our children. I gathered all the evidence, surveillance footage, phone transcripts, photographs. I placed it all in folders along with the names and contact details of the women Bonte had been with. I even included the address of a local clinic for STD testing, since most of his affairs were unprotected. On our kitchen table, I left divorce papers, DVDs of their encounters, printed stills, and my wedding ring, cut in half and smeared with grime. Beside it was a note. "Terry, this ruined ring is what's left of our marriage. Do not contact me. If you must, do it through the attorney listed in the documents. I've requested a restraining order at the school, so do not come there. Any disturbance will result in immediate police intervention. Our children know the truth, so don't expect to rewrite the story." Then I left. In the weeks that followed, everything fell apart for them. Word of the scandal spread quickly. The gym owner was forced to shut down and leave town. Bonte was later found beaten in an alley downtown. Divorce filings surged in our area, and several houses went up for sale. Terry came home that day, found my farewell package, and fainted on the spot. A neighbor called an ambulance. She later tried to contact me, but I ignored every attempt. Eventually, she even stormed the school, which ended in her arrest. After that, her efforts stopped. Our children didn't hold back. They confronted her openly, disgusted by her betrayal. Thankfully, they had inherited stronger values from me, not her. The divorce went through and financial matters were settled. Terry had to sell the house and move into a smaller place on the outskirts of town. By then, she was known around the community as the gym slut. Every time she went out, whispers and mocking glances followed. Shame and depression eventually pushed her into psychiatric care. As for me, I kept teaching, rebuilt my life, and now live peacefully in my new home.
Story 9.
My narcissistic sister tried to hurt me, but for years my family brushed it off like it was just a joke. Now, though, everyone is finally starting to see how unstable her behavior really is. A bit of background. I'm the second youngest out of 5 kids. I have 2 older brothers and 1 older sister. Let's call her X. There's a 5-year age gap between us, so we never really had that close sisterly bond growing up. To her, I always felt more like an inconvenience. Anytime it was my turn to choose something, like a movie, she would get upset. Even back then, she had this strong need to control everything and everyone around her, and honestly, it only got worse with time. I'm about to turn 19, and X is now 24. Earlier this year, in June, her boyfriend, let's call him Y, proposed to her during a family beach day. He had set up this big romantic display with white letters made of rose petals before we even arrived. She was ecstatic and immediately said yes. My parents and siblings were all thrilled. Our youngest sibling is only 4, so he didn't really understand what was going on. And that's when the chaos started. From the moment she got engaged, X basically turned into a full-on dictator bride, with my mom backing her up. Here's a list of her rules. All bridesmaids must pay for their own dresses, a soft pink gown costing $300, plus shoes, hair, and makeup. Every bridesmaid must attend all pre-wedding events, including a spa bachelorette party, $800 per person, and a weekend trip to Toronto with a 2-night stay at the Fairmont, $1,000. Guests must pay a $150 deposit to attend the wedding banquet or they lose their spot. Gifts must come strictly from her registry. Anything else will be returned. Bridesmaids must visit a beauty salon every 6 weeks at their own expense to maintain perfect hair and skin for photos. Tattoos must be hidden. Dresses must cover the neck, wrists, and ankles. Only the bride is allowed visible tattoos or bright hair. Everyone else must keep natural hair or wear a wig, again at their own cost. Dresses are only available up to size 10. Anyone bigger has to lose weight. I'm a size 12, and she straight up called me fat and even gave me a keto diet book. No one, including vendors, is allowed to contact the bride or groom directly. Everything must go through the bridesmaids. She even created a shared wedding email and expects us to just know what's acceptable without asking. We're also expected to track guest payments and gifts, reminding people about deposits and monitoring what they plan to give. Talking about all of this out loud made me realize how insane the situation actually is. I'm seriously considering speaking to a therapist at my university and possibly moving into a dorm. I even called my aunt, who's also my godmother, and she told me straight up that my mom's behavior is just as concerning. She advised me to have a serious talk with my parents, not only about the wedding, but also about how they've always favored my sister. She also said she's ready to step in if things escalate. Some people pointed out that money plays a huge role in situations like this. If my sister doesn't come back down to reality, people like me simply won't be able to participate in her wedding. I tried explaining that to her, but she refuses to listen. The thing is, her fiancé earns over $120,000 a year in IT, and she makes around $100,000 as an accountant. They could easily afford all of this themselves. At that point, I told both my mom and my sister that I wouldn't be involved unless someone covered all my expenses.
My mom keeps pretending everything is fine, but my sister is acting like a spoiled diva, and that approach clearly isn't working. Ironically, her fiancé is very calm, which is probably why they work as a couple. He's the only one who can actually calm her down. About the $150 entry fee, my family tried to convince me it's some kind of Italian tradition, but I found out that's completely false. I'll have to explain to my mom that I simply don't have that kind of money. Honestly, my sister could have just invited me as a regular guest. She already has 13 bridesmaids, 12 plus one maid of honor. The number comes from the groom's close group of 13 brothers from his class, which apparently means a lot to him. When I confronted my sister, she told me it was my responsibility as her sibling to save money for this. Meanwhile, my parents are already planning to spend around $100,000 on the wedding, so apparently giving me $2,000 for expenses is too much. I'm also starting university soon, which will cost around $177,000. Then I found out something shocking. My parents had actually set aside $25,000 for each of us kids. The deal was, once we turned 19 and started university, that money would be ours to use. My dad even confirmed it with bank statements. He was about to transfer my share to me. But after my sister got engaged, things changed. Apparently, she had told my mom she always felt like a neglected child. She's used that phrase before, and I think it really got to my mom. Feeling guilty, my mom decided she could redirect money from all the kids' accounts to fund the wedding. My two older brothers never used their money because the military covers their expenses, so that's $50,000. Add my sister's $25,000 and my $25,000, and suddenly there's $100,000 for her wedding. My mom decided since my education would cost $177,000 anyway, she could just take my $25,000. And of course, my sister pushed this idea. She knows exactly how to manipulate situations like this. There's also deeper history behind all of this. After I was born, my mom suffered severe postpartum depression and was hospitalized for 4 months. During that time, my dad had to take care of all of us, and a nanny looked after me. My sister, who was about 5 years old at the time, ended up getting the least attention, and she never forgot it. She didn't blame my mom, she blamed me. At one point, she even tried to suffocate me with a pillow. My mom stopped her in time, but the family later turned it into a funny story, probably as a coping mechanism. Growing up, she constantly used manipulation to get her way. At first, it was small things, toys, attention, but as she got older, it turned into bigger demands, like expensive trips, and now this wedding. This is also why I've always been closer to my dad than my mom. We actually had a somewhat normal relationship when I was around 12, but everything changed again when my mom got pregnant with our youngest sibling. That pregnancy wasn't planned, and somehow I became the target of my sister's resentment again. Update 2. Now for what actually happened. We finally had a serious conversation. I explained everything, how unfair it was, the financial pressure, and how it affected me. My dad completely lost it when he realized what was going on. He had no idea about the $100,000 plan. I showed him screenshots, especially where my mom kept saying, "Your father and I agreed," which wasn't true at all. We resolved the wedding issue. I'm not required to attend. Then my parents asked me to leave the room so they could talk privately. Later, my dad asked me why I never came to him earlier. Instead of answering directly, I showed him everything I had written. He was furious. He immediately called my sister and demanded she come home, but she refused, saying she was with her fiancé's family. When he insisted, she hung up and blocked him. After that, my mom came to talk to me privately. She opened up about her postpartum depression and things I had never known before. We managed to reconnect a bit. I asked her if my sister would agree to therapy, since she clearly believes those early childhood events affected her so deeply. My mom said she would try, but she can't force her. I told her that if my sister refuses therapy, I will cut contact with her completely. My dad reassured me that I would get my $25,000 and I don't have to attend the wedding. He even joked that since she's charging guests $150, she can fund her wedding that way. We also confirmed that the $150 tradition is completely fake. Even the groom's mother was shocked when she heard about it. The only somewhat similar tradition is a money dance at some weddings, but nothing like mandatory payments.
So, my sister showed up about 5 hours later, while the groom's mother was still there. She acted sweet and polite, like nothing was wrong. But the moment the woman left, everything exploded. It was like a switch flipped. My sister immediately started demanding to know why my dad had interrupted their evening and forced her to come home. Dad didn't even try to be polite. He said he didn't care about their plans and told her to sit down. She refused at first, and they began arguing. Eventually, she sat down, but only after Dad used a mix of pressure, financial threats, and even saying he would tell the groom's mother what she's really like, something her fiancé apparently hasn't fully seen yet. I was asked to leave the room again. From outside, I could hear shouting, accusations, and manipulation. My sister started threatening to cut off contact with the family or even prevent my parents from seeing their future grandchildren. She tried pushing my mom back into agreeing to the original $100,000 wedding plan, but this time, both my parents stood firm. At one point, my dad snapped and yelled that my mom was not her emotional punching bag and that she wasn't to blame for what happened with her postpartum depression. He told my sister that if she had issues because of it, she needed therapy. Then I was called back into the room. We started going through everything, beginning with the keto diet book. My sister tried to justify her behavior by calling me fat and lazy, but my dad shut that down immediately and defended me. She broke down crying, and my mom asked Dad to be less harsh, which he tried to do. In the end, we talked through everything. For the first time in a long time, I actually felt like a real part of the family, not just someone they dump problems on. Eventually, my sister stormed out, called a taxi, and left, claiming she was being attacked. We decided to wait until Christmas, when my brothers would be back in town, to have a full family discussion about what to do next. Most likely, it will come down to either therapy or cutting her off completely. Meanwhile, my parents are still negotiating the wedding budget with the groom's family. They made it clear that if such a wedding is going to happen, everyone needs to contribute. The groom's family agreed that $100,000 for a wedding is insane. The latest plan is that my sister will receive $15,000, but in reality it's closer to $5,000, since $10,000 has already been spent on her dress. The remaining $10,000 will be saved for something more meaningful. The groom's family also agreed to contribute $15,000, $10,000 for the wedding and $5,000 for the honeymoon. As for my education, tomorrow my dad and I are going to the bank. We're canceling the loan I was pressured into taking and paying a small penalty. Thankfully, since the loan hadn't started yet, the fee is minimal. My dad covered it himself because he agreed I should never have been pushed into taking that loan in the first place. My parents also agreed to pay for my first year of tuition without touching the $25,000 saved for me. That money will now be transferred into a separate account for my future. My relationship with my mom is still a bit strained, and my sister straight up hates me now. She blamed me for everything and said I ruined her relationship with her fiancé and his family. Because of that, she banned me from her wedding and cut me out of her life completely. Honestly, I don't feel like I lost a sister. It feels more like I finally got rid of a villain. I promised my parents I would never treat my younger sister the way I was treated. I want to be someone she can rely on, someone who protects her, just like my dad and brothers protected me. Some comments I saw pointed out something important. My sister literally tried to kill me as a child. That's not something small, it's serious trauma. And the fact that it was later turned into a funny story is deeply concerning. That's not normal. And honestly, people are right.
I need answers about why my mom handled it that way and why my sister wasn't kept in therapy longer. She should also apologize for that. The author's clarification. At first, my parents didn't treat the incident as a joke. It was my sister who later started saying it was just a joke, especially as we got older. After that incident, my parents were very careful. They never left me alone with her. Either they were present or my older brother was nearby. Only when I was around 10 and our relationship seemed normal did it start being talked about jokingly. I forgave her and genuinely believed it wasn't serious. Now I understand that wasn't true. She's resented me her entire life. As for therapy, she did go from ages 7 to 10, but she learned how to say exactly what the therapist wanted to hear, so the sessions ended. My dad didn't object, but my mom wanted a second opinion and found one of the best child psychologists in Alberta. He worked with her for almost 4 years. In the end, he said she had improved and learned to cope with her trauma, but honestly, I think she just got really good at pretending. About her fiancé, he knows everything. I sent him a long voice message, and we talked for 2 hours. In the end, he didn't seem very surprised. Looking back, I think he already knew. He also shows some concerning traits himself. Some people asked whether my parents feel like they failed in raising her. I think they do, at least partly. She showed troubling behavior even as a child, pushing, biting, hurting other kids, but I believe the lack of attention from my mom in that critical period really affected her. My dad was busy with my brothers, the nanny focused on me, and an aunt helped with her, but she couldn't replace a mother.
Even though things improved for a while, everything changed again when I was 12. That's when my sister told me directly that she hated me, and always had. Around that time, my mom got pregnant again, and my sister started acting out, taking her anger out on me, the house, even the dog. To better understand her, it's worth mentioning that she actually stole her fiancé from another girl she knew, just because she wanted him, without caring about the consequences. Some people suggested she might have borderline personality disorder. Psychologists usually wait until adulthood to diagnose it, hoping the person will outgrow certain behaviors. But adults with BPD can become extremely manipulative, able to deceive therapists, hide patterns, and convincingly lie about their actions and emotions. At this point, I honestly don't think she would agree to therapy unless it was just to prove she's right. She didn't even give me that Lalaloopsy doll. She took it and burned it. Cutting contact really seems like the best option when dealing with someone like this. Life becomes much calmer without constant drama and accusations. Therapy only works if the person actually wants to change, and people like her often don't. That's why I've decided to go to therapy myself. It's already helping. Growing up in this kind of environment distorts your sense of what's normal, and only later do you realize how unhealthy it really was. So yes, my mom, dad, and I are all now in therapy. Update 3. 3 months later. Family therapy is actually going really well. My brothers were given leave and returned to Canada after being stationed abroad. Things are slowly improving, and my relationship with my mom is stronger than ever. It honestly feels like I have my best friend back. As for my sister, I have no real contact with her. A friend still follows her on social media, and she seems fine. The wedding was moved from December to November. She and her fiancé bought a house, and there are rumors she's pregnant. She has completely cut ties with us. Her fiancé's family has been spreading negative rumors about ours, but we're staying strong. On a brighter note, my older brother is getting married, and instead of losing a toxic sister, I'm gaining an amazing one. She's incredibly kind. She checks in on me, sends food when I'm down, and even asked me to be her bridesmaid. She's an only child, and her mom passed away, so it means a lot to her. I said yes. By next year, I'll officially have a new sister. I also started dating someone. He's in the army too. Apparently, that's my type now. He's very supportive, and things are going great so far. Update 4. After the wedding. My family and I weren't invited to the wedding, but we heard how it went from relatives and friends. The ceremony itself was pretty standard. The groom's mother wore an ivory dress, and some guests even brought kids despite it supposedly being a child-free event.
The real drama happened at the reception. The groom's mother invited one of his ex-girlfriends, apparently hoping to stir things up, but it didn't work. The ex tried to create tension, but he shut it down quickly and asked her to leave. So honestly, nothing too dramatic happened. They got married and now they're heading off on their honeymoon. And yes, my sister is pregnant. At the end of the reception, during a slideshow, the final image was an ultrasound with the caption, "Baby surname June 2023." At this point, the story has already sparked plenty of opinions. I don't think there's much more to add. I'm just glad it ended the way it did, because situations like this don't always turn out so well.
Story 10.
I let my sister-in-law throw her baby shower at my house, but then she tried to kick me out of my own home during the party just to impress one of her wealthy friends. I told her husband what happened, and that ended up leading to their divorce. Now she's raising the baby alone. I'm 32, married for 3 years. My husband, 35, and I have been together for 5 years, but he's currently working out of town, so we're basically in a long-distance situation. He comes home every other weekend. We recently bought a beautiful new house right next to my parents' place, so it's convenient for all of us. It's pretty big for just me, but I love the space. At our housewarming, everyone complimented it, especially my sister-in-law, Carrie, 32. She couldn't stop gushing about it. Carrie and I aren't super close, but we've always gotten along. A couple weeks ago, she asked if she could have her baby shower at my house. I agreed without hesitation. She was pregnant, I didn't want to be rude, and honestly, I thought it might be nice to socialize a bit, since I spend a lot of time alone. She said she didn't want to waste money renting a venue when I had such a perfect home for it. Her own house is fine, but smaller and not as impressive. I took her compliments at face value and agreed. For 2 weeks, she came over almost every day to plan things. I even took a day off work to help her. I work in finance, definitely not in event planning, but she kept treating me like her personal party coordinator. Still, I didn't mind because I thought this would bring us closer. I was wrong. On the day of the shower, I spent hours helping the decorators set everything up. Carrie arrived early, thanked me, acted totally normal. Then 15 minutes before guests were supposed to arrive, she looked at me and asked, "So where are you planning to spend the next couple of hours?" I was stunned. At first, I thought she was joking. I mean, it's my house. I was dressed for the event, had bought her a gift, and had been involved in planning everything. I asked if she was serious, and she calmly explained that I wasn't on the guest list. Apparently, she never intended for me to be there. She claimed she thought I was just helping out, like some kind of hired planner. She told me the shower was for close family and friends only, and that unfortunately, I didn't make the cut. She even asked me to leave before her guests arrived so I wouldn't cause a scene. I was furious, humiliated, and honestly heartbroken. I stormed outside to call my husband, but he was busy at work and couldn't pick up. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I decided to call Carrie's husband, Jim, 33. I don't know him well. He's quiet and reserved, but I told him everything. How I'd let her use my house, help plan the whole thing, and then how she tried to kick me out of my own home for her little exclusive party. He was silent for a long time after listening. I apologized for dumping all this on him, but I couldn't keep it in. I was so hurt. Jim finally said, very calmly, that I had nothing to apologize for, and that under no circumstances should I be leaving my own house. It would have been ridiculous for me to leave, and Jim told me he was on his way over. He didn't want things to escalate between me and Carrie, and he didn't want her getting worked up while pregnant. That sounded reasonable, so I waited. 15 minutes later, before any of her guests arrived, Jim showed up. Carrie looked like she'd seen a ghost when he walked in. As soon as I heard the doorbell, I went back inside. We all stood in the living room, and Jim calmly but firmly told me I was absolutely welcome to stay for the shower. This was my house after all. Carrie tried to argue, but he gave her a sharp look, and she went silent. She spent the whole evening glaring at me like she wanted me to vanish. I kept my cool and carried myself with dignity, but I quietly decided right then I was done with her. I even thought about canceling the whole event out of spite, but I'd put too much time and effort into helping set it up.
So I endured the evening and promised myself I'd never deal with Carrie again. After the shower ended, Jim apologized again for her behavior. Carrie didn't even look at me. He actually apologized for that too, saying she had no right to treat me that way. She was clearly bitter and thought I had forced myself into her special day, which was honestly insulting given it was happening under my own roof. Later that night, I told my husband everything. He was furious and wanted to call his sister immediately, but I asked him not to, at least not that night. I just wanted peace. But peace didn't last. The very next morning, my in-laws called me fuming. Apparently, when Carrie and Jim got home, they had a huge blowout fight because Jim knew what she'd done to me. Now, Jim had packed up and said he was done. He stopped speaking to Carrie entirely and even cut off communication with my in-laws. That shocked everyone, since Jim had always been close to her family. Their parents had even been old family friends. But suddenly, his side of the family blocked Carrie's parents everywhere. Social media, phone, everything. And yet, somehow, this was all my fault. According to Carrie and my in-laws, if I just kept quiet and gone along with her plan, none of this would have happened. They actually blamed me for ruining her marriage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Carrie humiliated me in my house, and I was the one being painted as the villain? I lost it. I told them straight up, I am not taking the blame for any of this. Carrie behaved horribly. I generously allowed her to host an event at my home for free, and in return, she tried to humiliate me by kicking me out of my own house, all because she didn't think I was close enough family. Excuse me, I'm literally her brother's wife. I reminded them that if my husband had been home, Carrie never would have dared to treat me that way. And I don't regret telling Jim the truth. He was the only reasonable adult in this mess. If he decided enough was enough and chose to walk away from his marriage, I trust his judgment. That's his choice, and it's not on me. But my in-laws won't stop harassing me. They keep saying I've ruined a family, and Carrie's baby will grow up without a father because of me. Honestly, that's just emotional blackmail. I'm close to blocking them completely, but the only reason I haven't is because sometimes their words do get in my head. They make me doubt myself, even though I know deep down I didn't do anything wrong. My husband, thankfully, is fully on my side. He told me I did nothing wrong, and he'll be the one to explain to his parents that Carrie caused this, not me. He says they should be supporting her instead of attacking me. But I'm just exhausted. I don't feel guilty at all, but they won't leave me alone, and all I want is for this drama to finally be over. Honestly, I still don't even understand why it mattered so much to Carrie that I wasn't at her baby shower. It never made sense to me. So, was I really wrong for telling her husband the truth about how badly she treated me? You can make up your own minds, but personally, I think I did the right thing. I don't see any reason why I should be the scapegoat here. Yes, it's tragic if their baby ends up growing up without a father, but if they couldn't fix their marriage anyway, that outcome was inevitable sooner or later. And let's be real, Carrie had zero interest in resolving things. If she had been willing to apologize, maybe there would have been a chance to work things out. Instead, she doubled down and pushed all the blame on me. That's just insane.
Update 1. Hi again. It's been almost a week since the baby shower, and Carrie and Jim are officially getting divorced. This isn't speculation. Jim already announced it on his socials. I didn't think things would unravel this quickly, but apparently he's already filed and the process has started. He moved back in with his parents, and they've been living apart ever since. I wasn't sure if I should even reach out because I honestly felt guilty, but after talking with my husband, we agreed that someone from the family should at least check in, especially since Jim hadn't blocked us. Clearly, he left that door open for a reason, so I sent him a message, just saying I was sorry that things had turned out this way. Not an apology for causing it, more like expressing sympathy. He actually reassured me, told me not to blame myself because their marriage had been hanging by a thread for a long time. After that, I asked him directly, why did Carrie hate the idea of me being there so much? Because the only close relatives excuse never added up. She'd invited plenty of people who weren't even family, people I knew she wasn't close with. So what was the real reason? Well, he told me, and wow. The truth was, Carrie had been desperate to impress one particular guest, an old school friend of hers who'd married into a very wealthy family. Carrie's been planning to start a business after the baby, and she was hoping this woman's wealthy husband might invest in it. Her entire baby shower plan was basically a performance for this one guest. And here's the kicker. She wanted to pretend my house was hers. That's why she didn't want me around. She thought she could host the event, claim the house was hers, and put on this illusion of being more successful than she really is. Obviously, she couldn't pull that off with me standing right there. As it turned out, that important friend didn't even show up because she got sick that day. But the fact remains, Carrie was perfectly willing to lie, humiliate me, and use me just to keep up appearances. When Jim found out, he confronted her at home. She admitted it openly, like it was no big deal to fake an entire lifestyle just to impress someone from high school. Jim told her straight up she owed me an apology for treating me like trash after I'd been generous enough to host. She flat out refused, and that fight cracked open everything else. According to Jim, this wasn't new behavior. For the last couple of years, Carrie's been obsessed with pretending they're wealthier than they are, staging things for social media, putting on a front for acquaintances. He said it all started not long after their wedding, when some of her friends made snide comments about how modest their wedding was compared to others. Since then, she's been living in this fantasy of trying to look rich. Hearing this honestly blew my mind, but it also made everything click into place. Honestly, I think all those comments from her friends really got under Carrie's skin. But she's a grown woman, not a teenager. She shouldn't still be this obsessed with what other people think. Real friends don't mock you for not living a flashy lifestyle. If they do, maybe they're not worth keeping around. The thing is, Carrie and Jim aren't struggling at all. They live a perfectly normal, comfortable life. Sure, they're not wealthy, but they're fine. Jim works in real estate, and Carrie has a steady job at a marketing firm. She even had plans to launch her own business after the baby. If anything, she should have been saving up instead of spending recklessly. But Carrie's been fixated on projecting this glamorous image they simply can't afford. Jim said he tried countless times to explain to her that their life is good enough as it is, that they don't need to impress anyone. But she just brushed him off. Instead, she kept buying things without talking to him first, kept putting up a front. That put a constant strain on their marriage. He admitted he used to ignore it because he loved her so much, but with a baby on the way, he couldn't look past it anymore. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about the kind of future they'd be able to give their child. After the baby shower fight, Jim snapped. He told me even if I hadn't called him that day, he would have left sooner or later. The baby shower incident just sped things up. He doesn't blame me for anything. And honestly, I feel lighter knowing that. My husband and I talked it over too. He feels sorry for Carrie, of course, but he also thinks Jim wouldn't have walked away unless he'd thought it through. Jim was a good husband, and if he reached his breaking point, that says a lot. I do feel bad for Carrie, especially since she's pregnant, but at the end of the day, she dug herself into this. She's in her 30s, still acting like she's in high school. Still letting shallow people dictate how she feels about her own life. She needs therapy more than she needs new designer bags. I honestly hope they figure something out, if only for their baby's sake, because growing up in a broken home is tough. For now, though, I'm stepping back. I've decided to block Carrie and my in-laws for the time being, not out of spite, but because I don't see anything good from staying involved. My husband agrees. We'll give them space and focus on our own lives. Update 2. So my husband just got back a couple of hours ago and he filled me in. He's been in touch with Jim these past few days, and apparently Jim is open to giving their marriage another shot, but only if Carrie is willing to apologize and agree to go to therapy. My husband's been trying to get that message across to her, but so far she hasn't responded. His parents said she's avoiding everyone right now, just isolating because she's so upset, which honestly is understandable, but the ball's in her court now. As for some of the comments on my last post, a lot of people called me selfish, saying my husband and I were greedy and should have been financially supporting Carrie and Jim. I honestly don't know how people came to that conclusion, but let me clear the air. We bought this house fair and square because we could afford it. If it hadn't been within our budget, we wouldn't have bought it. And for the record, Jim and Carrie are not broke. They have stable incomes. Acting like they need our charity is just insulting to them. Also, my husband and I are in a very similar financial situation to Jim and Carrie, so I don't understand why they'd need our help, or why anyone would think they do. It's a bit odd, but since some of you brought it up, I wanted to clarify. Some people didn't like that I said I hope they reconcile and stay together, claiming Jim deserves better. Maybe he does, but ultimately it's his choice. I don't get why so many people feel the need to pour hate here, call me names, or call Jim a pushover without even knowing him. They love each other, despite all their problems, and they're having a child together. That's a big deal. They can't just walk away from each other and move on, given the circumstances. So yes, I wanted and still want things to work out for them. That's all I wanted to say for now. Update 3. Hi everyone, it's been almost 3 weeks since my last post. I just wanted to share that Jim and Carrie have decided to reconcile and try to work things out. I'm really happy for them, even though Carrie and I still aren't talking. I found out from my husband that they've agreed to attend family therapy for a couple of months to see how things go. They'll still live separately for now, and when the baby arrives, they'll co-parent together for the first few months. If things go well, they plan to move back in together. I'm genuinely happy for them. I know this isn't what a lot of people wanted to hear. Many were hoping Jim would just leave her, but he's going to do what he thinks is right, and everyone else will have to respect that.
My husband secretly booked business class tickets for himself and his mother for our honeymoon, leaving me with a seat in economy class. So I exposed him right there in the airport lobby, in front of everyone. I'm 32 and my husband Van is 36. We got married recently. We had been together for 4 years and engaged for 8 months. I met him when I was 29. At the time, I worked as a bar manager, and he used to come in regularly as a customer. We started talking, and eventually he asked me out. I turned him down at first, but he kept coming back to the bar, always finding excuses to chat with me. My coworkers joked that it was kind of sweet. Eventually, I decided to give him a chance, and from there, everything took off. Van is, in many ways, wonderful. He's affectionate, kind, emotionally mature, financially independent, and always plans our dates. The only issue I ever had was his mother, Naomi. Before anyone judges me, I want to explain. When I first met her, I actually liked her. Van was 13 when his parents divorced. His father, Matt, cheated on Naomi with a coworker. Naomi was completely devastated. They had been together since college, and she believed they would grow old together. Matt begged for forgiveness, saying he had never been with anyone else and that this was a stupid mistake caused by losing his head. But Naomi refused to forgive him and filed for divorce. What Matt did was awful, but Van was too young to fully understand what was happening. He was just heartbroken watching his family fall apart. He lived with his mother during the week to stay close to school and spent weekends with his father. Despite his mistake, Matt was a good father to Van. He supported him, attended every school event and sports game, showed up for parent-teacher meetings, and most importantly, allowed Van to be himself. Naomi, on the other hand, became extremely strict after the divorce. Van believes her behavior changed because of the betrayal. She became obsessively controlling. According to Van, he wasn't allowed to stay out late with friends, date girls, go on school trips or picnics, be near lakes or pools, sleep over at friends' houses. When he told me about these rules, they sounded ridiculous. Van explained that his mother justified everything by saying she was lonely without him and just wanted to protect him from the world. Unsurprisingly, Van quickly realized he felt much more comfortable living with his father. Matt's rules were simple. Don't stay out too late, and always share your location when going out with friends in case of emergencies.
When school trips came up, Naomi would forbid Van from going, but Matt would sign the permission forms and encourage him to participate. This caused massive fights between Naomi and Matt, with Naomi threatening legal action. If Van wanted to hang out with friends, Naomi would say no, so he waited for weekends at his dad's place to finally have some freedom. As a teenager, he grew to hate living with his mother. They argued constantly. She criticized his clothes, his hair, and his friends. He spent most weekdays locked in his room, counting down the days until Friday, when he could escape to his dad's house. When Van was 17, Matt introduced him to his new partner, Heather. Heather is a kind woman who treated Van like her own son. She struggled with infertility and had accepted that she would never have children. Meeting Matt and learning he had a son was something she genuinely welcomed. Van adored her. She became a second mother to him. For Naomi, this was unacceptable. She couldn't tolerate another woman in her son's life. She caused endless scandals and tried to poison Van against Heather, claiming that Matt must have cheated with her during the marriage, which wasn't true. Heather entered Matt's life long after the divorce. Naomi refused to accept this reality and began making Matt's life difficult, even preventing him from seeing his son. When weekends came, Naomi would say Van couldn't go to his father because Heather was some unknown woman and she wouldn't allow her son to stay with strangers. The conflicts became uglier and uglier. When Van turned 18, he was accepted into 2 universities. Naomi pressured him to choose the one closest to her home so she could visit him every week. Van didn't like that university. It lacked proper programs in his field. He discussed it honestly with his father. Matt told him he should choose what was best for himself, regardless of Naomi's wishes, but Van was terrified of upsetting her. In the end, he chose the university farther away. Naomi exploded. She screamed that he was abandoning her, that all men were the same. She threatened to kick him out and said she wouldn't pay for his education unless he did what she wanted. Van called his father, and Matt immediately came to help him pack and move out. That was the last day Van lived with his mother.
Just to clarify, being someone's +1 meant that Van was expected to take his mother as his guest to various events, for example, company parties or work functions. From what I later understood, even when we traveled, she demanded that he constantly share his location, claiming it helped her sleep peacefully at night. All of this made me deeply uncomfortable. I could clearly see Van being torn apart between wanting a normal adult life and feeling obligated to take care of his emotionally unstable mother. He didn't want to meet all her demands, but he was terrified that she might do something extreme again. Unlike his mother, his father Matt was calm, grounded, and emotionally healthy. I had met Matt and his wife Heather many times, and they were always warm and welcoming. They never asked intrusive questions. Matt showed genuine interest in my life without ever trying to belittle me. I saw many of Matt's best qualities reflected in Van. That's probably why I stayed. I knew Van was more than the damage his mother had caused him. I understood that he needed therapy, and I gently encouraged him to seek it, but he always insisted that he was fine. When Van proposed to me, completely out of the blue, it became one of the happiest days of my life. He surprised me by bringing my parents and my best friend into town so they could be part of the moment. Matt and Heather were there too, congratulating us wholeheartedly. The only person missing was Naomi. Van said she wasn't feeling well. Honestly, I was relieved. I didn't want her saying something inappropriate in front of my parents. I knew they would instantly dislike her if she did. We were having a wonderful time when Van suddenly received a call from the hospital. His mother had fallen down the stairs. We all rushed there, but Naomi refused to see me or anyone else. She demanded that only Van be allowed into her room, so we waited outside. I found that strange. We were all there out of concern, but it didn't feel appropriate to say anything at the time. When Van came out, he said she would be fine. According to the doctor, she had a fracture and needed to stay overnight. Naomi wanted Van to stay with her. Matt immediately offered to stay instead, pointing out that she would be sleeping anyway and that Van should take me home. But Van refused. He said his mother wouldn't like that and he didn't want to upset her further. So we all went home. My parents and my friend helped me clean up afterward. Van booked them hotel rooms for the night, but they chose to stay with me instead. I think they could see how sad I was, that I wouldn't be spending the night with my fiancé on the very day he proposed. That should have been my first warning sign that things were only going to get worse. Wedding planning quickly turned into what Naomi wants. She interfered with my wedding dress, chose the flower girl, commented on Van's suit, controlled the guest list, the venue, almost every single detail. Van and I have long planned our honeymoon in Hawaii, but Naomi insisted that flying that far was unacceptable and that somewhere closer would be much better. That was when I finally tried to set a boundary. I told her calmly but firmly, no. Naomi was shocked and said it was disrespectful to speak to her that way. I replied honestly that the honeymoon was for Van and me, and the decision was ours. She immediately burst into tears, telling Van that I was excluding her, ignoring her, and pushing her out of his life. She accused me of trying to steal her son, which was absurd. I reminded her that I had already accepted her choice of officiant, venue, cake, and even the dresses for my bridesmaids. I had tried to accommodate her wishes wherever possible, but I would not allow her to dictate where we went on our honeymoon. Van was caught in the middle. He tried to talk to her, but she framed herself as a martyr, a mother sacrificing everything for her son. Later, I even sent her an apologetic message, knowing how much she meant to Van. Her reply chilled me. She said no woman would ever take her son away from her, and that I should know my place. I immediately showed the message to Van. He called his mother to confront her, but she accused me of trying to drive a wedge between them and insisted that he should always love and believe her more than me. I was deeply hurt. After the call, I told Van exactly how it made me feel. To his credit, he agreed. He reassured me that we would stick to our plan and go to Hawaii. I was relieved. It felt like Van was finally starting to set boundaries. I believed we could enjoy our honeymoon far away from her controlling presence. The wedding itself went smoothly, without major incidents. However, during the reception, my mother-in-law somehow managed to give a speech entirely about herself, emphasizing how much she had sacrificed in her life. It felt like a quiet attempt to reclaim attention even on our day. Still, I chose to focus on the positives. My parents, Matt, Heather, and our guests had a great time. We danced all night. I went to bed excited, knowing we were leaving for Hawaii the next day. On the morning of our honeymoon, I woke up in an amazing mood. Van and I headed to the airport, and I felt genuinely happy until we arrived. That's when I discovered that Van had booked himself a business class seat and me an economy seat. I was stunned. I would have happily paid for business class myself. Van had insisted on handling the travel arrangements, so I assumed we would be sitting together. When I asked him what was going on, he said he had found a great deal and upgraded his ticket, but there were no business class seats left for me. It didn't sit right with me. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal, just a few hours. I told him that if it really didn't matter, then he could sit in economy while I took business class. He snapped. He accused me of being overly sensitive and said we'd see each other after landing. When I asked where he was going, he said he was heading to the business lounge. I was completely confused and hurt. I tried calling him, but he ignored every call. My suspicion grew stronger. Something felt very wrong. Then my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. She never called me directly unless she couldn't reach Van. I answered, intending to tell her that Van would call her back soon. Instead, she started asking where exactly I was sitting in the airport, which cafe, which lounge. Already overwhelmed, I finally asked her what she wanted. After a brief pause, she mockingly told me not to lose my composure because she was also flying with us on our honeymoon. I completely lost it. I shouted, demanding to know what kind of sick joke this was. Naomi calmly explained that she wanted to stay close to her son and didn't want him flying so far away, so she had convinced him to bring her along. I hung up, furious, and marched straight to the business lounge. Security didn't want to let me in, but I told them my husband was inside and that I urgently needed to speak to him about his mother. After a long argument, they finally let me through, and that's when I saw Van, sitting comfortably, scrolling through his phone.
So his phone had been in his hands the entire time. He had been deliberately ignoring my calls. I walked up to him and he looked up, clearly shocked to see me there with security. He asked what was going on, but I didn't waste time. I asked him directly if it was true that his mother was flying with us on our honeymoon. Van froze. I asked if that was the real reason he'd bought me a separate ticket, so I wouldn't find out that he was planning to spend our honeymoon with his mommy. His face turned bright red. People around us started staring. Even the security guard seemed invested in the scene. That was when my mother-in-law walked into the lounge, scanning the room for Van. When she saw us, she stopped dead in her tracks. I told Van that she herself had told me everything. That's when he started stumbling through excuses. He said that originally he had booked economy tickets for just the two of us, but Naomi had cried and begged him, and in an attempt to keep everyone happy, he brought separate tickets and tried to hide it from me. He claimed he had booked her a completely different hotel and that she wouldn't bother us. Naomi stepped in, as she always did. She said I should be grateful that her son loved her so much and that it was no big deal if she came along. After all, she had never been so far away from her boy before. I was shaking with rage. If we hadn't been in an airport, I would have lost it completely. Instead, I raised my voice and told my husband that I was ashamed to be married to a child who couldn't go anywhere without his mother. I said he looked more like her husband than her son. Van whispered that I was embarrassing him in front of respectable people and that we could talk about it after landing. I laughed in his face. I told him to enjoy his honeymoon with his mommy because I was done. Both of them stared at me in shock as I walked away. I tore my tickets in half and called a taxi home. Van ended up not flying either. He came home later and started yelling at me, saying I had no right to speak to me like that and that he was only trying to do the right thing. He said his mother flew alone because she didn't want to lose her ticket. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried. I couldn't even look at him. All of this happened yesterday, and ever since then, I felt like I'm in a fog. I know with painful clarity that our marriage is over. He hasn't apologized. He barely speaks to me. And it hurts. Leaving a marriage is a massive step, especially when just 3 days ago, I believed I would spend my entire life with him. That's why I came here. I needed to know if I was wrong for walking away after my husband tried to bring his mother on our honeymoon. Update 1. I'm overwhelmed by the support I received, hundreds of comments and private messages. When I wrote my post, I never expected so many strangers to care. After reading everything, I agree with those who said I needed to have one final, honest conversation with my husband. If he continues to side with his mother, I will have no choice but to end this marriage. I can't spend my entire life fighting this. Naomi clearly doesn't care about us, considering she still flew to Hawaii alone, fully aware that all of this chaos was caused by her. I'll update after we talk. Update 2. A month has passed since my last update, and a lot has happened. After the airport incident, I made a decision. The situation was unbearable, and I couldn't live in limbo without a real conversation. I packed my things and waited for Van to come home from work. That conversation would either save our marriage or destroy it. When Van walked in and saw me waiting, I saw surprise and fear flash across his face. I asked him to sit down and handed him a glass of water.
The tension in the room was almost suffocating. We hadn't spoken since the incident because he still believed I owed him an apology. I took a deep breath and told him everything, how his mother had made me feel all this time. I explained how I saw him change whenever she was around, how he seemed to become a different person. I told him I understood the crushing guilt he carried over her past, over her sacrifices, and how she constantly used that guilt to control him, but it was slowly destroying the foundation of our relationship. I cried as I explained how deeply she had invaded my life, not just our wedding, but even our honeymoon. I told him I fell in love with his kindness and warmth, but his relationship with his mother was tearing apart everything we had built. When I finished, I saw tears streaming down his face. He admitted he had no idea I felt this way. He said he had spent his entire life caring for his mother, living in constant fear that something terrible might happen to her. He confessed that he had become so used to putting her needs above everyone else's that he no longer knew how to stop. He admitted he knew bringing her on the honeymoon was wrong, but she leaned on his guilt and he gave in, convincing himself it would somehow be better for everyone. I told him that if his mother truly cared about him, she wouldn't have flown to Hawaii alone and left him behind. He nodded and admitted he had been blind to her manipulation until now. He broke down completely, dropped to his knees, and apologized over and over again. My heart shattered. I hugged him, realizing how much internal pain he was carrying. It became clear that he needed therapy, and if he truly recognized his mistakes and was willing to work on them, I was willing to give this marriage a chance. Within the next 2 weeks, Van booked appointments and began seeing a therapist. He also had an honest conversation with his father.
Update 3. Matt had no idea how bad things had gotten and was genuinely shocked by how far Naomi had pushed everything. His father told him the same thing I had, that it was time for Van to stop living in constant anxiety over his mother and finally start living his own life, without excuses. With the help of his therapist, Van decided to move to low contact with his mother. He understood that he needed space to untangle his thoughts and emotions. It wasn't an easy decision. Naomi was calling him non-stop, as expected. He hasn't told her yet that he's seeing a therapist. He knows she'll completely lose it when she finds out. He plans to tell her this coming weekend and ask for space. If she refuses, he's prepared to block her entirely. Overall, I see this as real progress and a necessary step toward healing our relationship. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time, I feel like we're moving in the right direction. Update 4, 3 months later. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I want to thank everyone who followed my story and supported me. The past few months have been an emotional roller coaster, and the encouragement from this community meant more to me than I can express. First of all, Van did talk to his mother after working through things in therapy. As expected, it went terribly. She unleashed a torrent of accusations, screaming that I had stolen him from her. She demanded that he divorce me, insisting that I was the cause of all the problems and that everything had been perfect before I came into his life. But this time, Van finally stood his ground. He firmly told her that he would no longer tolerate her manipulation. He made it clear that she had to respect our marriage and our private life. Then he made a difficult but decisive choice. He blocked her number. I did the same. It was necessary for our mental health and for the survival of our relationship. Of course, Naomi began telling anyone who would listen that her son had abandoned her and that she had been treated horribly. Gossip and rumors reached us through relatives and mutual acquaintances, but we stayed focused on our own lives. Matt, Van's father, played an important role during this time. He checked in on Naomi occasionally to make sure she was safe and taking her medication. After cutting contact with his mother, Van's condition noticeably improved. The constant cloud of anxiety and guilt that had followed him for years finally lifted. We started going on dates again, uninterrupted by endless phone calls. We were finally able to just enjoy each other. As for our honeymoon, Van wanted to make things right. He surprised me with a trip to Hawaii. This time, we both flew business class, and we had the calm, romantic vacation we had originally dreamed of.
It was a beautiful trip, one that helped us reconnect and create a positive memory where there had once been so much pain. Overall, I feel happy and optimistic about our future, despite everything we've been through. My husband's growth and the effort he's putting into our relationship are impossible to miss. If anything new happens, I'll be sure to post another update.